Chapter 9:36. Following the opening of the third inner mansion and the appearance of the third seed of the divine power, Jiang Wang could clearly feel that the island floating on the boundless sea had become more solid. The Tao energy supporting it had also been partially released. When Jiang Wang knocked on the third mansion and plucked the divine power seed of Buzhou Feng, a white light filled the sky. An extremely cold, killing intent swept through the entire five-mansion sea like a gale. The clouds in the sky dispersed, and the sea surged. The chubby cloud child curled up into a ball in the cloud pavilion. Kill! 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 Jiang Wang's heart was filled with killing intent. The White Raja deserved to die. Ji Shaoqing deserved to die. Wei Sun deserved to die too. Jiang Wang almost wanted to turn around and kill his way back to the Crescent Moon Island. But the moment his hand touched the long sword, clang! Chang Xiangxi suddenly cried out. In the five-mansion sea, a cold light swept across the sky. It was the sword spirit of Chang Xiangxi. Jiang Wang suddenly shook and broke free from the extreme, killing intent. Don't! In the biting cold wind, Zhu Biqiang seemed to have said this word, but it also seemed to have said nothing. But Jiang Wang had already calmed down. The sea was vast, and the sky was far away. The long coastline had unknowingly appeared in his vision. Looking down at Zhu Biqiang, whose face had become even paler in his arms, he remembered, at first, he only wanted to increase his strength and rush to Tianfu City faster. But just now, he had almost turned around and killed his way to the fishing house. This new divine power might be very strong, but was also very dangerous. It could easily make people who were deeply involved in it become extreme and extreme. Chang Xiangxi, which swept across the sky of the five-mansion sea, was the clearest reminder. A sword had two edges. When using its sharpness, one had to restrain oneself to avoid injuring oneself. Jiang Wang's soul appeared and jumped into the five-mansion sea. He held the long sword formed by the sword spirit in one hand and turned around to slash. The Buzhou Feng that swept through the five-mansion sea was forcefully stopped. Jiang Wang slashed his sword again. The Buzhou Feng had nowhere to go and could only rush back to the sky. Due to the appearance of the third inner palace, the first and second inner palaces, which had temporarily disappeared, appeared again with the support of the masters of the five palace seas. The temporary seclusion of the first and second inner palace did not mean that they were weaker than the third inner palace, nor did it mean that the divine ability seeds shining upon them were inferior to the Buzhou wind. Instead, it was a spiritual choice to avoid internal friction. They would not fight each other without Jiang Wang's control. However, Jiang Wang had already taken control of the situation. The sky above the five prefecture seas shone brightly. The three inner mansions were a crimson-red mansion, a black and white mansion, and a white mansion. Externally, it was a blazing sun, a double-sided cold moon, and white stars. The blazing sun and the double-sided cold moon hung at the highest point, facing each other from a distance. The white star stood side by side with the other two. Further down were the ruins of the cloud-top immortal palace that had recovered some of its vitality. Below there was the virtuous green cloud. At the very bottom was an enormous isolated island. It was verdant and lush as it floated above the boundless sea. The five prefecture seas in his body were calm. The sea around him was calm and peaceful. Looking forward, he had already arrived at the Qi border. Transgressor, Qingyang Jiang Wang. Those checkpoints, whether bright or dark, opened one by one. Those vigilant eyes that were focused here also looked away. In the Qi border, Jiang Wuyo, Cheng Gengsheng, Li Longchuan, Yin Fu, these people's power was the most obvious. Jiang Wang carried Zhu Biqiang and flew from the easternmost Crescent Moon Island to the Qi Linhai County Tianfu City in the Qi border. He flew all the way without any obstruction. Blue Metal Jiang, I've been waiting for a long time. The Tianfu City Lord stood in the sky and greeted from afar. Directly calling Jiang Wang's name was not so intimate. Calling him Lord Zhu was too flattering. Directly calling him by his position was the most appropriate. It was not too far or too close. the distance was just right. The Tianfu city lord was at the peak of the outer building and had once fought against the king of hell. Of course, he wouldn't be humble to Jiang Wang, but Jiang Wuyo, Cheng Gung Sheng, and the others had sent him news one after another, so he couldn't ignore it. One had to know that even the Tianfu mystic realm had broken the norm and opened in advance this time. This mystic realm was an important resource of the Tianfu city. Although the true harvest was unknown and the danger was too great, it was not regarded as the best mystic realm. However, there was still the possibility of predetermined supernatural powers, so people still rushed over. In the past, when it opened, many benefits would be exchanged. This time, because of Jiang Wang's request, the Tianfu city was already prepared. Cheng Gungxing only said one sentence, "I'll arrange it." This was a close friend. "Thank you, City Lord." Jiang Wang carried Zhu Biqiang and replied in the air, "Forgive me for not being able to bow. You're the cheese good man. You showed off your power on the sea. What's the point of being polite?" The Tianfu city lord led the way and went straight to the full moon lake in the city. Countless pairs of eyes in the entire Tianfu city looked at them, wondering who this young man, carrying a woman across the sea, was to be valued by the city lord. I remember that Blue Metal Jiang also participated in the opening of the Tianfu mystic realm last time, the Tianfu city lord asked casually as they flew. "Yes, it's like yesterday," Jiang Wang forced himself to respond. "At that time, no one in Qi knew about you." The Tianfu city lord couldn't help but look at Jiang Wang a few more times and sighed. "In such a short time, you've made such a name for yourself. The younger generation will surpass us in time." "You flatter me." When they reached the full moon lake, the Tianfu city lord stopped and said, "I've already arranged it. The Tianfu mystic realm is now open. You can go in by yourself." Sending him here was enough to show his sincerity. With his status, it wasn't appropriate to send him in further. Jiang Wang gave him a half bow. "Thank you for your kindness." The Tianfu city lord nodded in satisfaction and left. The full moon lake was surrounded by high walls and a large formation. Unless the Tianfu mystic realm was open, no one was allowed to enter or leave. The opening time of the mystic realm was a reflection of the mystic realm's self-adjustment and adaptation. It wasn't easy to open the mystic realm in advance for people to explore. At the same time, it was also an act of excessively exhausting the mystic realm's resources. If you didn't know that Jiang Wang was only sending a dying person in to be buried with his loved ones, the Tianfu city lord wouldn't have agreed to open the mystic realm. Walking through the high walls, he saw the full moon lake surrounded by long corridors. It was already nighttime. There was a bright moon in the sky, brighter than the moon outside. This was the sign that the Tianfu mystic realm was open. The last time he came here, Zhu Suyao was also there. At that time, Jiang Wang didn't know who she was. He also didn't know that he would have so many interactions with her sister. Things in the world were like this. He didn't know before, and he didn't know after. The moon in the sky was stacked on top of the moon in the water. The moon in the water was peeled off to form the moon gate. Jiang Wang flew into the air parallel to the moon gate. "Taoist, Zhu." He didn't say anything other than this soft call. He just lifted Zhu Biqiang's motionless body and gently sent her into the moon gate. Chapter 9:37. "You're amazing, Ji Shaoqing," a voice said in the main hall. Ji Shaoqing, who was wearing a black brocade robe with golden edges, stood in the hall with his head lowered, not saying a word. Green smoke rose from the huge incense burner. Through the smoke, one could still see the middle-aged man with long black and white hair. Or rather, the man who retained his middle-aged appearance. He stood sideways with his hands behind his back, looking like someone who had been in a high position for a long time. His side profile, with his short beard trembling with his lips, was actually very gentle. "But you're not the amazing one. You're not the one who can stop Neverwinter Island and Huaying Palace. Can you think clearly that you don't have enough power in front of those people? Fishing Sea Tower is the amazing one, and you're wasting their reputation." He took a deep breath. Turning around, he couldn't help but raise his voice and ask angrily, "Who told you to guard Tinya's stage? How can you achieve great things if you're so petty?" It's fine if you're petty, but you did such a stupid thing and let others look down on my plans. Is this how I usually teach you to do things? Would I personally deal with that Jiang Wang for a grudge with Bijou? Would it force a young girl who was completely uninvolved to die of exhaustion? Especially when she's from Fishing Sea Tower. How will the world view my Fishing Sea Tower? How will they view me, Gu Huaixin? He raised his finger and pointed at Ji Shaoqing. Ji Shaoqing, you've disappointed me. There are many ways to take revenge, but you chose the stupidest one. You can't weaken your opponent, and you'll make new enemies for yourself. Master, I just feel that it's unfair for you. In terms of talent and cultivation, how can Third Elder be better than you? Ji Shaoqing gritted his teeth and said, but even the Tower Master is biased towards him. Is it because he's older and more experienced? I'm just indignant for you. I don't want to let go of any of those who ruined your plans. It would have been better if he didn't defend himself. Once he did, Gu Huaixin's suppressed anger surged again. He suddenly clenched his fist. Bang! Ji Shaoqing was caught off guard. His entire body was suppressed by a huge force, pressing him down to the ground. Gu Huaixin, who was extremely good at maintaining his composure, even roared, I don't know how to do things. Do I need you to stand up for me? Could it be that my counterattack is to kill a little girl who is completely unaffected and whose cultivation has already been crippled? Ji Shaoqing was pressed against the floor tiles, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He was in a mess, but he still gritted his teeth and said, Jiang Wang killed Elder Hai Zongming and Elder Bijou. He is the enemy of the Sea Fishing Tower. He ruined our plan at the Tianya stage and is our enemy. Could it be that I'm going to watch him become famous in the coastal waters and return with a perfect ending? I wanted to make his efforts come to nothing. I wanted to see his expression of shock, despair, and pain. Shizhuan, this group of Qi people have their eyes on top of their heads. They fear power and are not virtuous. If we don't let them chew on the pain, they won't know who has the final say on the sea. The more Ji Shaoqing spoke, the more agitated he became. However, Gu Huaixin almost squeezed out the word from between his teeth. How dare he talk back? I was wrong, Shizhuan. Ji Shaoqing immediately admitted his mistake. He knew that his master was really angry, and he couldn't argue about this anymore. He closed his eyes fiercely and opened them again. Then he supported himself on the floor tiles with both hands and struggled to get up. The Qi people are powerful, and I shouldn't have provoked them. What am I? If I make a mistake, I'll fall into the abyss. I'll take responsibility for what I did. If there are any enmities in the future, I'll take them all. If one comes, I'll take one. If a pair comes, I'll take both. There was obvious resentment in his words. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Don't worry, I won't mention your name. Then he turned around shakily and walked out of the hall. Gu Huaixin was silent for a long time until his Qianjiao disciple had walked out of the hall and could no longer be seen. Then he let out a long sigh. Unrepentant, Jiang Wang quietly hung in front of the moon gate. When the moon gate disappeared and the moon shadow split in half, the full moon lake returned to its peaceful state. It was a small, shallow lake, and the water was clear and cold. There was no moon when he looked up. The sky was bright. Jiang Wang still stood there quietly. He stood alone in the full moon lake for an entire day. He was only thinking. He wasn't waiting for a miracle. Indeed, no miracle happened. This rescue mission from the Qi people, which involved a large number of people, failed in the end. When he came out of the bewildering world, he was full of hope. Although he was burdened with heavy debts, he felt that he was omnipotent. He could overcome any difficulties and would not be stopped by any problems. He did such a big thing. He saved a girl who was used as a sacrifice during the sea sacrifice ceremony on the offshore islands. This was something that had never happened before. This was something to be proud of. But in the end, he really respected the Fishing Sea Tower. He admired the Fishing Sea Tower's great history and glorious inheritance. He respected such a sect that made great contributions to the human race. But if they didn't intend to give him any hope from the beginning, why did they use such harsh conditions to create a false bubble? Why did they have to play with and humiliate a person with great self-esteem like this? Jiang Wang stood there. He didn't want his emotions to interfere with his decision, but he thought about it seriously. He asked himself, hate, hate, resentment, resentment. Thus, he had an answer. He knew what he should do. He turned around and walked out. He didn't look at the full moon lake again. The affairs of the world had nothing to do with Zhu Biqiang. She had grown up in a woven world, and now she was buried in another woven world. Her timidity, strangeness, and fear could all be comforted. In the last moment when Zhu Biqiang couldn't speak, Jiang Wang couldn't know what she was thinking. But that extremely weak aura was like her perseverance on the Tianya stage for the past 10 days. Elder Su said that she shouldn't have been able to hold on even earlier, but she endured for a few more days in pain. She was clearly not a strong person, but she was stronger than many people in the world. I wish you all the best, Jiang Wang said in his heart. We all know that reincarnation is a cowardly lie. Not everyone can resist the risk of true reincarnation. Not all memories can be preserved. Not all lives can be restarted. But I wish you all the best. I wish that you can reunite with your sister in the place she left. I wish that she can continue to protect you, no matter where. If you don't reincarnate, I hope that you will dissipate in one place and be connected. You will never be lonely, and you will never be afraid. If you unfortunately fall into reincarnation again and come to this world again, then I wish that at that time, it will no longer feel strange to you. Jiang Wang stepped into the air and flew out of Tianfu City. Today, I make a vow. When you come to the human world again, it should be different. Chapter 9:38. A voice suddenly shouted from within the city. Jiang Qingyang, where are you going? Before Jiang Wang could be surprised, someone had suddenly recognized him. Another voice shouted, your name is on the sea and border roll. You're number 1 on this month's sea merit roll. Jiang Wang followed the voice from the air and saw a group of people gathered in front of a posted notice. Relying on his good vision, he clearly saw the appearance of this notice. It was a sea and border roll. However, this roll was different from Jiang Wang's previous ones. What was displayed wasn't specific data on each cultivator's expedition, but a true ranking list. It was the sea merit roll. The entire list was very concise and very conspicuous. There were 2 rankings altogether, called the main roll and the secondary roll. They corresponded to the Shunlin battle strength level and the outer tower battle strength level respectively. Presumably, the present age Dao masters and above shouldn't be discussed by the common people. As for the battle strength below the outer tower, there really wasn't any need for a ranking list in a bewildering world. Shunlin itself was already the peak of cultivation that ordinary people saw. After all, to truly break through the limit of one's lifespan, one's cultivation wouldn't decline until death. It was indeed like Shunlin. The 2 rolls were divided into 2 columns. The main roll was on the left, and the secondary roll was on the right. Admittedly, the Shunlin powerhouses on the main roll had the most limitless glory, but the secondary roll had the most fierce competition. After all, the outer tower battle strength was basically the main force of a bewildering world expedition. Those who were active in hunting in the wilderness were all at this level of combat strength. Shunlin powerhouses mostly only appeared in large-scale, bewildering world battles. And in the 4th month of the 3,919th year of the Dao calendar, the first place on the sea merit roll was shockingly Jiang Wang's name. How great of an honor was this? In the entire Eastern Domain, how many cultivators were on bewildering world expeditions? An entire Eastern Domain's human cultivators and an entire Blue Sea race warriors were fighting in bewildering world battlefields for months and years. How fierce and dangerous to be able to stand out among them. One could be called an outstanding person. To be precise, Jiang Wang's name should have been on the sea merit roll recorded by this powerful magic tool, the sea and border roll. In the end, the people of Tianfu City weren't familiar with the sea and border list. That was why the person from before had said that Jiang Wang's name was on the list. Jiang Wang knew very well that by the end of the month, his name would no longer be number 1. After all, it was only April 15th, and only half of the month had passed. However, at this moment, he naturally felt a sense of pride as he looked at the ocean merit roll. This was the glory that he had earned by risking his life, sword by sword. He saw the name Jiang Wang, showing off his ability, leaping over the tide, and occupying the first place on the secondary list. After his name, his identity was recorded in small print. Chi, a fourth-grade blue metal arrester from Qingyang Town. After his status, it was his battle record. He had killed 104 Sea Clan commanders. At the end of the list, opposite the two words Jiang Wang, was the ocean merit points that were also flowing on the tide. 11,300 points. At the end of the list were Haisun's rules for recording. Killing a soldier of the Sea Tribe would earn you 1 ocean merit point. Killing a general-level Sea Tribe member would earn you 10 ocean merit points. Killing a commander-level Sea Tribe member would earn you 100 ocean merit points. Killing a king-level Sea Tribe member would earn you 10,000 ocean merit points. From the commander level to the king level, the ocean merit points increased by leaps and bounds. Of course, even if the difference in ocean merit points was so great, it couldn't completely reflect the difference in difficulty. After all, although Jiang Wang had obtained 11,300 ocean merit points, it was absolutely impossible for him to kill a king-level Sea Tribe member. Specifically, killing a beginner commander-level Sea Tribe member would earn him 100 ocean merit points. Killing a mid-level commander-level Sea Tribe member would earn him 200 ocean merit points. Killing a high-level commander-level Sea Tribe member would earn him 500 ocean merit points. Killing a top-level commander-level Sea Tribe member would earn him 1,000 ocean merit points. Only 10 people were recorded on the main and secondary lists of the ocean merit roll. Not to mention the main list. The person in second place, under Jiang Wang's name on the secondary list, already had 6,300 ocean merit points. As long as he maintained his current speed, he would definitely surpass Jiang Wang by the end of the month. But at least for now, Jiang Wang was almost half of the other person, and he was far ahead, with the entire eastern region as his backing. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that there were crouching tigers and hidden dragons in the bewildering world. It wasn't difficult to find someone stronger than Jiang Wang. If it weren't for Wei Sun forcing him with time, Jiang Wang wouldn't have risked his life to fight and obtain his current achievements. On the other hand, being stronger than Jiang Wang didn't mean that he could obtain better achievements. This also required the cooperation of the Sea Tribe. After seeing this ocean merit roll, Jiang Wang was already sure that the displacement of the bewildering world had been completely stabilized, and all information channels had been opened. The ocean merit roll was originally only used in the bewildering world, and not many people paid attention to it in the offshore islands. It was even more obscure in the Qi territory. However, with the help of some people, as soon as the ocean merit roll was established, it was already posted in the Qi territory's Tianfu city. It was easy to imagine how it would spread in the offshore islands. This might be one of the ways the Sea Suppression Alliance dealt with the evolution of the Sea Tribe, using honor and rewards to attract more Eastern region cultivators to participate in the war in the bewildering world was also a way to relieve the pressure of the war. At the same time, the Sea Suppression Alliance could also take the opportunity to expand their influence in the entire Eastern region. This matter must have been carried out before, and the rankings and rules of the ocean merit roll definitely needed to be discussed. However, when Jiang Wang had just left the bewildering world, he hadn't seen this roll yet. This meant that in the 2 days he had been in the Tianfu city, the ocean merit roll had already been promoted and spread throughout the offshore islands. Relying on extraordinary power, if one really wanted to carry out something and transmit some information, the speed would be very astonishing. However, the ocean merit roll could spread so quickly and widely. In just 2 days, it had already been posted in the Tianfu city for people to discuss. It was enough to show how much importance the Sea Suppression Alliance attached to this matter. This was definitely an important part of the plan to resist the Sea Tribe. The dissemination of the ocean merit roll first meant that the existence of the Sea Tribe was being publicized to the entire eastern region. Then, how to deal with the rise of the Sea Tribe would definitely require more support from the human race. Back to the current situation in the Tianfu city. The day before, The Tianfu City Lord had personally welcomed him into the city, which had already aroused the curiosity of countless people. Now that the Ocean Merit Roll had been released, his name was at the top of the sub-roll, which had already caused a sensation. Regarding the posting of the Ocean Merit Roll, the Sea Suppression Alliance's actions against the Sea Tribe, and how the Chi side would deal with the expansion of the Sea Suppression Alliance's influence without affecting the overall situation of the Eastern region. Jiang Wang didn't want to analyze the thoughts of those big shots too much. It was difficult to touch the truth with different perspectives. It was inevitable that children would be naive and ridiculous to speculate about the thoughts of adults. However, how this matter would affect him and how it would affect his next decision, he had to think about it. Especially, the Ocean Merit Roll was a list that declared honor to the human race. When it would appear and what names would appear, there would be deep considerations. The Sea Tribe members that Jiang Wang had killed in the bewildering world were naturally real achievements. However, he had gone to the bewildering world to wash away his sins. The so-called washing away his sins was, of course, atoning for his crimes with merits. Then, should his merits still be counted? The Ocean Border Roll was jointly controlled by the Ocean Fishing Tower, Jueming Island, and Mog Valley. What kind of competition was behind this Ocean Merit Roll? What did it mean to be listed on it? With the difficulty of communicating information between the bewildering world and the modern world, it wasn't easy to spread the news. How could he use the fame he had gained from the Ocean Merit Roll? In front of the Ocean Merit Roll, someone said loudly, "Isn't it good to divide the offshore islands into a few counties and merge them with us? Look at the list that the Sea Tribe made. The Chi people are also number one. What's there to struggle about? What Sea Tribe? The Sea Suppression Alliance also has our Jueming Island. Okay? Tisk. The seas are dangerous. I don't want to go, not to mention the Sea Tribe. We'll shut our doors and let them fend for themselves." You're short-sighted. The overseas islands have their own resources. Even if you don't want them, there are plenty of people who want them. The more people there were, the messier the topic became. Another voice said, "The number one on the sub-roll all came from our Heavenly Province's Heavenly Province Secret Realm. Who dares to say that the Heavenly Province Secret Realm isn't good enough in the future?" The first voice noticed that Jiang Wang hadn't flown far and asked, "Jiang Qingyang, are you going out to sea again? Why are you going this time?" The people of Heavenly Province had a sense of honor and treated Jiang Wang as one of their own, so they were very concerned about him. Of course, from the perspective of the entire Qi, this wasn't wrong. If Jiang Wang's reputation had spread throughout Qi after he defeated Wang Yiwu, then with the appearance of the Ocean Merit Roll, everyone had to know about Jiang Qingyang. Faced with the enthusiasm of the people of Heavenly Province, Jiang Wang only said, "I'm doing what I should do." Stepping on the azure cloud mark, he was already far away. Chapter 9:39. Today was the 15th of April, the day of the Blessed Land Challenge in the Great Illusionary Land. But Jiang Wang gave up. This was the first time he gave up on the Blessed Land Challenge since he owned the Great Illusionary Land. There was no other reason. It was just that his killing intent was hidden in the scabbard, and he needed to take someone's life. He had always wanted to fight with experts. But not now. From the Isle of Huai to Tianfu City, the journey was smooth. From Tianfu City to the Isle of Huai, there was still no obstruction. In the morning, he was in Tianfu City, and in the evening, he was on the Crescent Moon Island. This was Jiang Wang's current maximum speed. He didn't do anything immediately, nor did he meet with any friends. Instead, he silently found an inn to stay in. He bathed, burned incense, and slept. He spent night after night doing nothing but rest. He adjusted himself to his peak state. On the 17th of April, Jiang Wang pushed open the door and walked out. He walked on the spacious and clean stone path under the gaze of countless people on the Isle of Huai. One night and one day was enough for Jiang Wang's friends to know that he had returned to the Crescent Moon Island. But no one came to disturb him. Naturally, his enemies knew about this as well. The Ocean Merit Roll was posted in Tianfu City and naturally spread even more widely in the offshore islands. Under the publicity of the Sea Suppression Alliance, The ocean merit roll had now become the symbol of honor that focused the attention of all the island cultivators. Every cultivator ranked on the ocean merit roll was regarded as a heroic existence. And Jiang Wang didn't care about those gazes. He walked forward in the direction of the fishing sea tower. As he walked, Cheng Gengsheng appeared. Li Longchuan appeared. Su Xianxian appeared. Yin Fu appeared. Jiang Wuyo also appeared. They walked silently behind Jiang Wang, supporting him as friends and partners. If there was anyone who didn't know that Jiang Wang had saved a woman who was used as a sacrifice at the ocean sacrifice ceremony, then this person must have just arrived at the offshore islands. But even the transcendent cultivators who had just arrived at the offshore islands knew that the name on the ocean merit roll was Jiang Wang. However, that woman was not saved in the end, and not many people knew about it. In a hero's story, the supporting characters were often just embellishments. It's just a name that I can't remember. No matter how that person had lived, no matter how lively she had been. In the crowd, Jishu looked at Zhao Wuyan, but without any suspense, he was ruthlessly suppressed by Zhao Wuyin's resolute gaze. Jishu pouted, "I know. What kind of friendship was this? What kind of thing was this? Really just like my father?" Of course, the last sentence was spoken in an extremely low voice. Jiang Wang walked forward. He walked forward under the gaze of more and more people. Gazes carry weight. Jiang Wang remembered this sentence very clearly. One or two gazes were hard to detect. However, thousands of daos were enough to make it difficult for one to breathe. Those scrutinizing, suspicious, and complicated gazes converged to form an extremely terrifying pressure. But Jiang Wang just walked forward very calmly. He did not enjoy it, nor did he suffer. He no longer considered too many implications and too many problems. He just made a decision and carried it out. That was all. Jiang Wang walked all the way to the encampment of the fishing sea tower before stopping. The last time he came here, he was following behind Grandma Bijou. At that time, even if he was a visitor, he walked directly in. Now, there were no friends in the fishing sea tower. Yes, he did not have a single friend in the fishing sea tower. Yanglu did not count, and there was no need to mention the others. He had many friends behind him, but he did not say a word to his friends. Because this time, he was traveling alone. No matter how many friends he gathered, they could not do anything to the fishing sea tower. Therefore, he was only willing to represent himself. As the owner of the entire Crescent Moon Island, every blade of grass and every tree on this huge island belonged to the fishing sea tower. The encampment of the fishing sea tower did not need any particularly eye-catching signs. The place where the bustling crowd stopped abruptly was the boundary of the encampment of the fishing sea tower. Unauthorized people were not allowed to enter. This was also the most central position of this huge island. There was no tall archway, only two inconspicuous wooden pillars on both sides of the road. It was unknown what material it was made of, but it was dark and swarthy. Apart from being smooth, there was nothing special about it. Only when one got closer could they see that there were two couplets engraved on the left and right wooden pillars. The left said, "Removing the hook as the moon has hung in the sky for eternity." The right said, "Breaking the pole as firewood to illuminate all living beings." The history of these words was clearly measured in thousands of years, but there was no blur or loss at all. Every stroke was very clear, and even the hook was not worn away by the wind and rain. It was as if there was no possibility of it being worn down. It was like that in the past, the present, and the future. The boldness of these two couplets was truly admirable. What kind of fisherman would become the bright moon in the sky when his hook was removed? Only by breaking his fishing rod into firewood could he shine upon all living beings since ancient times. 10,000 years ago and 10,000 years back, there was probably only one dragon fisherman. Only with the firewood that illuminated the human race as the pole and the moon as the hook, only such a bold person could guard the sea alone and fish for dragons from the other side of the world. The handwriting of these two couplets was of the same origin as the words engraved on the world's edge stage. They were all the handwriting of the dragon fisherman. These two inconspicuous wooden pillars were where many fishing sea tower cultivators placed their hopes. At this moment, there was a person standing between the two wooden pillars, a plain, dignified, and reliable man. The senior brother of the fishing sea tower, Chen Jitao. To deal with Jiang Wang's group, it was difficult for people of a higher level to appear. This was not the sea worship ceremony, so there was no need for the perfected one to talk to them. And it was indeed impossible for people of a lower level to stop Jiang Wang. Chen Jitao, who was also a disciple and was widely regarded as the #1 person of the younger generation in the offshore islands, was the most suitable candidate. He stood between the two pillars and looked at Jiang Wang, who was slowly walking over. The embarrassment on his face was very real. Up until now, others might not know what happened on the World's Edge stage, but it was impossible for him to not know. He was very clear that this matter was completely Ji Shaoqing's personal revenge. There was no need for the fishing sea tower master to play such a small trick. If Wei Sun really wanted to kill Zhu Biqiong, he could do it casually. There was no need to explain it to anyone. On the contrary, since he had set the conditions and given the opportunity, the rest was Jiang Wang's own business. No matter what the result was, the noble perfected cultivator would not care or stop him. But as the senior brother of the fishing sea tower and the representative of all the disciples, he could not turn a blind eye when outsiders were looking for trouble with his junior brother. Right and wrong were very important things. But sometimes the same sect was right and the same country was wrong. For example, Chen Jitao was no exception. So he came here to block the way. Chen Jitao pondered for a while and said first, "I apologize for what happened on the World's Edge stage. It was the negligence of the fishing sea tower. I know there are some regrets, but no amount of money or treasures can make up for it. Some mistakes can't be made up for no matter the price. But please allow me to express my sincerity on behalf of the fishing sea tower." Jiang Wang raised his eyes and looked at him. "I don't remember what happened on the World's Edge stage, so there's no need to apologize or make up for it. I'm not here on behalf of anyone or any force. I'm only here on behalf of myself." His voice was very calm, but there was an irrevocable determination in the calmness. "I heard that the fishing sea tower has an ancient inheritance and extraordinary secret techniques. There's a disciple named Ji Shaoqing who is known as Tianjiao. I'm not talented. Please try my sword." Chapter 940. Jiang Wang never mentioned what happened on the World's Edge stage. He only challenged Ji Shaoqing in the name of seeking Tao. This didn't mean that what happened on the World's Edge stage wasn't important. On the contrary, it proved that it would never be erased. Jiang Wang would never forgive him. There was no possibility of reconciliation. He didn't need any compensation from the fishing sea tower. He would use his own sword to seek justice. Chen Jitao knew what Jiang Wang meant, but he couldn't stop him, because this was a very fair challenge. Jiang Wang and Ji Shaoqing were both inner palace cultivators. They were both young and full of vigor. They were both Tianjiao. Whether it was identity, cultivation, or age, they were all on the same level. It was normal for youths to exchange pointers. Only Ji Shaoqing himself could refuse. Why would he stop Jiang Wang for Ji Shaoqing? It was like slapping Ji Shaoqing in the face. As the senior brother of the fishing sea tower, he declared that Ji Shaoqing was inferior to Jiang Wang. But would Ji Shaoqing himself refuse? Jiang Wang blocked the entrance of the fishing sea tower and openly challenged him in front of so many people. Refusing would be a sign of weakness. The news that he didn't dare to fight Jiang Wang would spread throughout the coastal islands in the shortest time possible. Even his reputation wouldn't be the only thing he would lose. After all, he was a genius disciple of the fishing sea tower. He could represent Gu Huaixin's faction to a certain extent. Weakness was a sin. Chen Jitao didn't say anything, but that didn't mean all the fishing sea tower disciples would. Immediately, a young disciple stepped out of the crowd and sneered, "Senior brother Ji is such a person. If any Tom, Dick, or Harry came, he would fight. Do you still want to cultivate? You want to test senior brother Ji's sword? Are you worthy?" Jiang Wang didn't care about his insult at all. He just looked at him and said, "May I know your name?" The young disciple raised his head and said, "Bao Song." Jiang Wang stretched out his left hand and made a pleased gesture. He didn't hesitate at all. "I'd like to learn from you." The spectators, who had nothing to do with the matter, became excited. There was nothing else. Jiang Wang's performance was too confident, too certain. Faced with the doubts of the disciples of the Fishing Sea Tower, he didn't explain his identity, achievements, or past. Instead, he directly challenged them to a duel and let the outcome speak for itself. Could it be that if all the inner palace disciples in the Fishing Sea Tower came to question him, he would have to fight them one by one to prove his qualification? Judging from Jiang Wang's confident expression, it seemed to be true. Bao Song's purpose in coming here was not simple. It was best if he could help Ji Shaoqing test Jiang Wang's character. Of course, he wouldn't refuse. He directly faced Jiang Wang and said, "Then let me see who gave you the courage." When he took a step forward, it meant that the battle had begun. Without the slightest hesitation, Jiang Wang raised his hand and pressed out the 8 notes burning the sea. The flame sparrow's cry was accompanied by the sound of the 8 notes. For a moment, the light flared up. Even though Jiang Wang deliberately controlled the range of his Taoist technique, the spectators who had squeezed in also subconsciously retreated, afraid that they would be caught in the flames. He had started with such a powerful Tao technique that covered a large area. Moreover, it was a combination of flame and sound waves. It was unique and full of killing power. Many of the spectators couldn't help but cheer. To be able to instantly release an A-class upper-grade Tao technique at the inner palace level was enough to prove his talent. With this Tao technique alone, Jiang Wang lived up to his reputation as a genius. However, in the face of Jiang Wang's fire element Tao technique, Bao Song only smiled mockingly. Jiang Wang was ranked first on the ocean merit list. There was no doubt about his strength. Of course, he dared to help Ji Shaoqing because he was hot-headed. How could he stand out in front of so many people just to serve as a foil? A drop of water seemed to appear out of thin air and hovered in front of Bao Song. In a rapidly spreading sea of fire, this drop of water seemed so small and weak. However, Bao Song stretched out his finger and pressed it gently. Boom! It was as if an endless stream of water had appeared out of thin air. In a split second, the waves were turbulent and huge. He had only pressed a drop of water, but it was as if he had poured a river. Divine power, one heavenly primordial water. This was the essence of all water, the essence of the Dark Yin. A drop could turn into a river. The endless stream of water poured down. The sea of fire released by Jiang Wang did not even have the slightest room to struggle and was extinguished on the spot. The mighty sound of the waves was also completely drowned out by the surging torrents. Bao Song possessed such a divine power that could counter all fire element Tao techniques. It was no wonder that he was so disdainful of Jiang Wang's attack. The torrents of water poured down, and the onlookers all retreated further away. However, Jiang Wang only flicked his finger, and a drop of fire silently flew down. Boom! That drop of fire suddenly exploded, and the flames spread above the torrents. This fire could even ignite the one heavenly primordial water. The onlookers whispered to each other. Under the guidance of knowledgeable people, they knew that this was the divine power of Samadhi, true fire. Jiang Wang's countermeasure was very simple. Divine power against divine power. Samadhi, true fire against the one heavenly primordial water. He did not intend to try any other way to break out of this situation. Instead, he was extremely tough and wanted to use the most direct method to win. He wanted to use divine power against Jiang Wang. Fire and water are incompatible was often used to describe the relationship between enemies. However, water and fire were only objective descriptions. The relationship between them was one of mutual restraint, and they could not coexist. If the water was strong, it would extinguish the fire. If the fire was strong, it would burn the water. Between the Samadhi true fire and the one heavenly primordial water, which one was stronger? It was very difficult to determine. Those who stood in different positions had their own opinions. Even if they argued for 3 days and 3 nights, it would still be difficult to convince everyone. However, while it was difficult to determine which divine power was stronger, there was a difference between those who mastered divine power. Jiang Wang firmly believed that he was definitely stronger than Bao Song in terms of the development of divine power. Only then did he use the samadhi true fire without hesitation and directly clashed with Bao Song's one heavenly primordial water. For a moment, the torrents of water surged, and above the torrents of water, there was also a sea of flames. Chun Jitao spread his hands apart, and the watery light was like a shield covering all directions. He firmly controlled the battle range, so that the flames could not reach far and the torrents of water could not escape. This prevented the battle between Jiang Wang and Bao Song from spreading too far. They could only focus on each other. Bao Song was not a weakling. He had opened up 3 inner mansions and plucked a divine power seed. He could be considered an outstanding disciple of the Fishing Sea Tower and was 1 level higher than Lei Zhanxian, whom Jiang Wang had fought at the Invincible Martial Arts Gallery. If he could combine all his techniques and carry out an all-around massacre, he might still be a little wary of Jiang Wang, who was ranked first on the Ocean Merit Roll. After all, that dazzling battle record was enough to prove his killing power. However, how could he admit defeat when it was just a clash of divine powers? The divine power seed spun in the second inner mansion, and the tides became stronger and the waves became wilder. He used all his strength to squeeze out all his potential. The samadhi true fire and the one heavenly primordial water collided in almost every gap in the battle range, entangling, roaring, and destroying each other. Although Bao Song was stronger than Lei Zhanxian at the Invincible Martial Arts Gallery, the current Jiang Wang was not just a little bit stronger than he was then. It could almost be said that they could not be mentioned in the same breath. "This is your limit?" he asked calmly. And then, in the vast ocean, he took a step forward, and the true fire divine power was fully unleashed. The samadhi true fire that was already entangled with the waves suddenly burned even more fiercely. Hiss, 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 hiss. Countless white water vapor rushed wildly into the sky, almost forming a cumulus cloud at that moment. Bao Song spat out a mouthful of blood and fell backward. Every drop of water he controlled was burned to ashes. Chapter 941. Vast amounts of water vapor rushed into the sky, forming a scene of clouds in front of the Fishing Sea Tower. It was like a dragon, a tiger, a human, and a ghost. It was so powerful that the spectators were in awe. It was clear proof that the one heavenly primordial water had been incinerated. Abhijna against Abhijna. The young man who came to challenge Bao Song had clearly suppressed him. Such a direct clash of Abhijna displayed the difference in strength so clearly. The difference was too obvious. It was no wonder that this young man only said one sentence in the face of Bao Song's ridicule. "I seek your guidance." He could defeat him with a flip of his palm. Why waste his breath? Jiang Wang did not beat him when he was down. Instead, he clasped his hand, and the sea of fire that was burning the heavens and burning the earth instantly returned to his palm. The place was empty, as if nothing had happened. Only the water vapor in the sky that had yet to disperse was still telling the story of the battle. A familiar fellow disciple rushed forward and helped Bao Song, who had fallen to the ground and vomited blood. Jiang Wang averted his gaze indifferently. Bao Song was not worthy of his second glance. His gaze slowly swept across the cultivators of the Fishing Sea Tower. Everyone felt that they were being watched. Someone asked, "May I ask, fellow disciples of the Fishing Sea Tower, do I have the right to challenge Ji Shaoqing now?" It was only then that people realized that this battle that had amazed them and such a direct clash of Abhijna was so ordinary to this young man named Jiang Wang. Defeating Bao Song was not even worth mentioning. It would be surprising if he could not defeat Bao Song. Tian Chong, who was hidden in the crowd with a bamboo hat and a straw raincoat, was silent. A genius cultivator who had opened up 3 prefectures and obtained a powerful Abhijna was no longer a threat to the current Jiang Wang. What kind of growth did he obtain in the bewildering world? This terrifying speed forced him to retract his thoughts of removing the restraints. Tianhe, who stood beside him in the same attire, did not say a word either. This middle-aged man who had suffered a lot had always presented himself as a dull and steady person. Perhaps only Jiang Wang knew that his heart was as deep as the ocean. Jiang Wang's question was heard by everyone. With his reputation, his power, and his performance in the battle just now, who would have a nerve to say that he was not qualified to challenge? Of course, a voice replied. Ji Shaoqing strode out of the Fishing Ocean Tower's encampment. It was impossible for him to continue hiding like a turtle. He could not allow the cultivators of Fishing Ocean Tower to remain speechless. If Jiang Wang had to fight all the inner palace cultivators in the Ocean Fishing Tower one by one before he was willing to come out, that would truly be a joke. It was enough to bring shame to the Ocean Fishing Tower. It's not like I'm some sort of heavenly royal descendant. I've been diligent in my studies and training, and I'm just lucky enough to have a small reputation. Why would you need any qualifications to challenge me? He said with a smile, then frowned. However, Brother Jiang, is there some misunderstanding between us? He was obviously hiding at the side, waiting for Bao Song to test Jiang Wang's quality before walking to the front of the stage. However, his words were very beautiful and magnanimous. The following question was even more sinister. The word misunderstanding is too far-fetched. Jiang Wang pressed his hand on his long sword and said expressionlessly, "The path of Tao is difficult, and cultivators no hardship. You're famous, and Jiang Wang was just excited to see you. Please test my sword, and also to seek the Tao. Sigh, I'm sitting at home, but trouble comes from the heavens." Ji Shaoqing shook his head helplessly. I also feel bad about Zhu Biqiang's death. Before she betrayed the sect, she was very close to me, and was a lovable junior sister. However, a country has its laws, and a family has its rules. Since I'm guarding the Tinya stage, I can't not abide by the rules. Without rules, how can there be justice? Jiang Wang did not mention this matter, but he insisted on mentioning it. Jiang Wang wanted to define this matter as a challenge between young geniuses, and only emphasized seeking the Tao and asking for the sword. In this way, both sides' identities would be set aside, and the general would face the general. However, he had to make things clear and put the grudges on the table. It was not that he was afraid of Jiang Wang. Before, he dared to look on as Zhu Biqiang died, so there was no fear of Jiang Wang. His 5 palaces were perfect, and he had 2 powerful magical powers. He was also a figure of Tianjiao, far superior to the likes of Bao Song. Among the younger generation, how many people could be worthy of his fear? He just would not let Jiang Wang do as he wished. Whatever Jiang Wang wanted to do, he would stop it. He was just deliberately poking at Jiang Wang's scars to make him feel pain and anger. Since this person was so arrogant, daring to come to his door and ask for the sword alone, then he could either avoid the battle or accept it and win beautifully. Jiang Wang, who had just become first on the ocean merit roll, was just right to become his stepping stone and increase his fame. First, he had Bao Song come out to test the situation, then used words to provoke Jiang Wang. It was all for the same reason. He even faintly hinted in his words that Zhu Biqiang had some kind of relationship with him. He thought that Jiang Wang and Zhu Biqiang were in love, so he was deliberately rubbing salt on the wound. But Jiang Wang's gaze was calm. It was not that he was not angry, but that he suppressed his anger at the bottom of the lake in his heart and hid his killing intent in the scabbard. His anger towards Ji Shaoqing had already burned to the extreme, but his gaze was calm. I think I need to correct senior martial brother Ji on one thing. Zhu Biqiang did not betray the sect. Moreover, I have already completed my cleansing in the bewildering world, and she is now innocent. You can disrespect your former junior martial sister, but how can you trample on the words of your sect's perfected Lord Wei? I misspoke. Ji Shaoqing decisively admitted his mistake, but then he changed the topic and deliberately said with a bitter smile, "So, junior martial sister Zhu is really innocent. No wonder Brother Jiang hates me so much and did not hesitate to challenge me in front of the sect. Well, it is reasonable that Brother Jiang wants to teach me a lesson and vent his anger. I, Ji Shaoqing, accept this challenge. His wry smile was ridiculing and arrogant to the extreme. Cheng Gung Sheng, who was listening at the side, narrowed his eyes to the point that they could not be seen. The heavy sword in 14's hand sank half an inch into the ground. His face could not be seen due to his heavy armor. If not for the fact that the occasion was not right, and that he had to respect Jiang Wang's wishes, Su Shangqian would have already scolded him. Only Jiang Wang himself remained calm. He only said, Senior Marshal Brother Ji is talented and has outstanding strength. Jiang Wang does not have the confidence to hold back. Please sign a life and death contract. This challenge is only for the sake of seeking the Tao. The ancients say that if one hears the Tao in the morning, one can die in the evening without regrets. I will follow the example of the sages and have no grudges against you in life and death. The crowd was in an uproar. Many people who knew the inside story thought that Jiang Wang just could not hold back the anger in his heart and wanted to fight Ji Shaoqing to seek justice for Zhu Biqiong's death. But it was only a battle. In the end, there were still more people who placed their bets on Ji Shaoqing. But now, Jiang Wang wanted to sign a life and death contract. He was not acting in a fit of anger, but wanted to decide the date of life and death. This was too explosive and too exciting. Of the two people facing each other, one was Qi's fourth-grade blue medal, a man from Qingyang town, and the other was Fishing Tower's fourth elder, Gu Huaixin's personal disciple, a well-known figure in Tianjiao. No matter who died here today, it would be shocking news. Oh, Ji Shaoqing was also shocked, but his expression remained calm. Had he thought it through? Of course, he knew that Jiang Wang hated him to the core, but to a large extent, he thought that Jiang Wang was just blinded by hatred, which was why he came to the Fishing Tower's encampment to challenge him. He had the confidence to defeat Jiang Wang, but to be sure, he still let Bao Song test him first. He only showed up after seeing the true samadhi fire with his own eyes. But Jiang Wang did not only want to fight, but also wanted to use this battle to take his life. He could not help but wonder, where did this person's confidence come from? Jiang Wang did not need to answer the question of whether he had thought it through or not. His attitude was very clear. You have perfected 5 prefectures, obtained 2 supernatural powers, and are very famous. I just advanced 3 prefectures yesterday, and my cultivation is far inferior to yours. If you're afraid, you can refuse. Just admit defeat in front of so many people. I will not make things difficult for you. He looked at Ji Shaoqing calmly. I can wait until you can no longer refuse, then I will come to you. The onlookers who did not know the grudge between the two finally realized that the two people facing each other had a deep grudge. At least Jiang Wang had already expressed that he must fight to the death with Ji Shaoqing. If not today, it would be in the future. So far, Jiang Wang had only shown the true samadhi fire in front of people. Combined with his battle record in the bewildering world, one could assume that he was hiding another supernatural power. In the bewildering world, he had 2 prefectures and 2 supernatural powers. He just said that he advanced 3 prefectures yesterday. Could it be that he obtained a 3rd supernatural power? Maybe, but even if he did not, this talent was already shocking enough. No wonder he was so confident that one day he would be able to make Ji Shaoqing not even have a right to refuse. For Ji Shaoqing, if the two of them had to fight to the death, this might be the best time. Because Jiang Wang was younger and had more potential in the prefectures, and he had already explored 5 prefectures. At most, he could obtain a 3rd supernatural power. Putting aside the strength of their supernatural powers, there was a clear gap in their potential. Of course, more importantly, how could Ji Shaoqing admit defeat in front of so many people? The person who challenged him and wanted to fight to the death with him was not a strong person with a higher cultivation than him, like Fu Yanqing or Chen Jitao. It was Jiang Wang, whose cultivation was far inferior to his and 2 minor realms lower. How long had it been since he attained 5 prefectures? But the other party had just opened 3 prefectures yesterday. Once he admitted defeat, he would probably never be able to raise his head again. Not to mention any development in the islands near the sea. As long as people still had ambition for the future, they would not accept this choice. In front of the fishing sea tower, Jiang Wang could not possibly have any secret traps or schemes. In other words, if this battle was established, it would be a pure showdown of strength. Was he afraid? If he was even afraid of this, how could he have made it to this day and become famous on the islands? Good. Ji Shaoqing still had that tolerant expression. He said slowly, "Brother Zhang's desire to pursue the Tao has moved me. I do not want to fight, but the waves are endless. So be it. Just like what you said, this battle will determine victory and defeat, and also determine life and death." Chapter 942. In a secret location. Gu Huaixin sat cross-legged on a pure white praying mat, his long hair intertwined with black and white. He was playing chess with someone. The chessboard was made of yellow wood from Xiaoming Jiao. Its texture was clear and soothing to the eyes. Sitting opposite him was a man in his 50s. He did not look old and had an elegant temperament. He sat on a pure black praying mat. The chess piece in his hand was of the opposite color. After a long examination, he placed a white chess piece. The placement of this piece was very strange. It was completely away from the area where the battle was taking place. If it was for the sake of space, there were much better choices. It looked like a completely useless move. He seemed to always be making useless moves. Therefore, in the entire game, the white chess pieces were already at a disadvantage. Gu Huaixin held the advantage, but he was not arrogant at all. He just followed the rules and made another move, locking in the upper left area of the game. The elegant man picked up another white chess piece and said, "After so many years, it's really not easy to wait for you to make a mistake." Compared to his opponent, Gu Huaixin placed his chess pieces very quickly and firmly. However, he did not rush him, nor did he show any impatience. He only said, "In the end, it's finally here. It can be seen that as long as you live long enough, anything is possible." These words did not sound very right, because just by looking at their faces, there was a gap in their ages. In actual age, the gap was even greater. When a younger person said these words, it was inevitably somewhat ironic. However, the elegant man was not angry at all. Instead, he laughed involuntarily. "Huaixin, you're always like this. No matter what, you refuse to lose." Let's put it another way. Gu Huaixin also laughed. "I always win." The white chess piece turned repeatedly between his 3 fingers. The elegant man pondered for a while and placed another useless chess piece. He sighed softly. It seems so. Gu Huaixin still maintained his original rhythm. After a moment of thought, he placed a black chess piece and began to harvest the dragon. He placed one chess piece after another. His speed was neither fast nor slow. Naturally, he had the calmness of having the overall situation under control. The elegant man stared at the chess game that he had lost and suddenly said, "I've always admired Shaoqing. He has brains, talent, and ruthlessness. But now it seems that his structure is lacking." What is a pattern? Although Gu Huaixin was also very strict when he lectured Ji Shaoqing in private, he was unwilling to tolerate others criticizing his beloved disciple. He casually retorted, "Each generation has its own mission. What age, what kind of things do you do?" He wasn't even 40 years old, yet he was constantly thinking about what would happen 100 years later. Would he have a grand vision, or would he be in his twilight years? Senior Marshal Brother Su, when you were young, you used a pair of judge's brushes to expose the entire Misty Mountain sect. Wasn't that also said that you lacked breadth of mind? What about now? You're a Zhenren of the present age, and you're famous in the coastal waters. Where are those people who are talking about you? In the entire offshore archipelago, the only person with the surname Su who could be addressed as senior brother by Gu Huaixin was the 3rd elder of the fishing sea tower, Su Xiangwan. Throughout the entire sea sacrificial ceremony, Gu Huaixin's actions were incessant, and traces of his interference could be seen everywhere. On the other hand, Su Xiangwan, who was on the other side of the struggle, seemed to be transparent from beginning to end. Other than the few times Hai Jinping could not bear it any longer and retaliated, there were no other movements from his faction. Many people thought that this was a sign that Su Xiangwan was not as strong as others. However, if one ignored the performance of the various parties and only looked at the final result, it was not difficult to discover a fact. Gu Huaixin's faction had been busy and noisy, but in the end, they still left dejectedly. Not only did they not obtain the expected gains, but they were also given a heavy blow. Su Xiangwan seemed to have done nothing, but he was unscathed and still maintained his position as the third elder. During the period of the establishment of the Sea Suppression Alliance, he had been eating meat in large mouthfuls. Many people said that this was the master of the fishing sea tower's method of balancing. He was biased so that Su Xiangwan could keep his position. However, the truth was not known by outsiders. Judging from his appearance, Gu Huaixin was younger than Su Xiangwan. This meant that Gu Huaixin had achieved divine arrival at a younger age, and thus was more talented. During the time when they were both Jinren, it should have been foreseeable that the younger generation would surpass the older generation. Gu Huaixin spent a lot of effort on words like age and twilight to show his advantage. However, towards Gu Huaixin's words, Su Xiangwan still did not have any unpleasant attitude. He just smiled and said, Shaoqing's 5 prefectures have reached perfection, and he is already exploring the Star Dome. The 2 divine abilities he picked are very powerful. As for Qi's Jiangwang, he has just established 3 prefectures. From the light of the divine abilities, he has picked 3 divine ability seeds. He is also a rare talent. This battle is going to be interesting. Others did not know how many divine abilities Jiang Wang had picked, but it was not difficult for a Zhenren to see through the essence and see the light of the divine abilities. When he mentioned Jiang Wang, he used the word also to indicate that Jiang Wang's talent was similar to Ji Shaoqing's. However, both he and Gu Huaixin knew very well that Jiang Wang had picked 3 divine abilities after establishing 3 prefectures. He was already looking forward to becoming a heavenly abode. In terms of talent, he was better than Ji Shaoqing. This time, his battle results in the bewildering world were even better than his peers, and he took first place on the ocean merit roll. However, because Ji Shaoqing was older and had cultivated for a longer time, he was ahead in terms of cultivation. In terms of this battle alone, the 2 of them did have a chance. With the power of Ji Shaoqing's divine abilities, he might still have a chance after 3 to 5 years. However, if nothing unexpected happened, there would be no need for this battle to start in 10 or 20 years. Gu Huaixin did not intend to continue arguing. He only said, the army god has a disciple called Wang Yiwu, who is known as the first reaching heaven state in history. Many people in Qi's eyes regard him as another army god. However, after reaching the soaring dragon realm, he was defeated by someone in the same realm. This shocked Linzi. That was Jiang Wang's first battle that made him famous. It is said that in that battle, Jiang Wang won 1 round in the soaring dragon realm. Then, both of them reached the inner mansion at the same time. Jiang Wang won another round, completely breaking the army god's disciple's path to invincibility. Qi is indeed full of talents. He lives up to the Overlord's foundation. It is not a bad thing for someone with the mentality of a true powerhouse. Su Xiangwan also began to discuss Tianjiao with him seriously. That Wang Yiwu, even if he replicates the army god's path to invincibility, he might not be able to become another Jiang Mengxiong. Because Jiang Mengxiong is the road ahead. He is a road sign, but also a mental obstacle. He will never be invincible. If his path to invincibility is broken, he will be able to find his own path. Yes, a temporary victory or defeat is nothing, Gu Huaixin said meaningfully. Gu Huaixin said pointedly. Then he changed the topic. If Shaoqing can suffer a great loss in this battle, it might be a blessing in disguise. Jiang Wang and Ji Shaoqing had agreed to a battle of life and death. However, the worst-case scenario in Gu Huaixin's words was that Ji Shaoqing would suffer a great loss. He had made it clear that he would not sit by and watch Ji Shaoqing die in battle. At most, he would let Ji Shaoqing feel ashamed and move forward. But if the loser was Jiang Wang, Jiang Wang was courting death. What did it have to do with him? There was no reason to refute this. No matter who it was, they wouldn't just stand by and watch their disciple get beaten to death. It was just like how Jiang Mengxiong took Wang Yiwu away in Linzi. Su Xiangwan naturally understood this. If he were in Jiang Wang's shoes, he would have made the same choice. However, he put the chess piece back into the chessboard and said slowly, "Someone passed a message to the tower master." Gu Huaixin raised his eyebrows and looked at him, indicating that he was all ears. That person said that Jiang Wang, as the Qianjiao of Qi, volunteered to take the risk to clear the name of an abandoned disciple of the Fishing Sea Tower out of his own feelings. There is nothing to say about this. The Fishing Sea Tower set up a great trap in the bewildering world for the long-term planning of the human tribe. The Qi people are also aware of the sacrifice. Even if they are used as chess pieces, there is nothing to say. But you can't just give him conditions and make things difficult for him after he's done it. The Qi people can die in battle or be sacrificed, but they can't be fooled like this. Su Xiangwan sighed and said, "That person said, if you don't remember the rules, I will come here personally and teach you the rules." Chapter 943. Gu Huaixin didn't ask who passed the message to Wei Sun. How many people in Qi dared to speak to Wei Sun like this? He also didn't ask what Wei Sun's attitude was. Wei Sun had already expressed his attitude by passing the message over. Wei Sun might not be afraid of that person. However, the current Fishing Sea Tower was not qualified to confront Qi head-on. Perhaps after the establishment of the Sea Suppression Alliance, some cultivators in the Fishing Sea Tower had become unprecedentedly arrogant. Many of them believed that they were on par with Qi, and there were even voices of establishing subsidiary sects in the East region. However, Gu Huaixin, who was an absolute high-level member of a sect, knew very well how big the gap was between the Fishing Sea Tower and Qi. The Fishing Sea Tower's unification of the offshore islands was a long-term, comprehensive, and three-dimensional operation. It wasn't something that could be done overnight, and it wouldn't be effective in just one or two things. The entire Fishing Sea Tower had to take action at all levels and all aspects for carrying out operations. The major ones included the establishment of the Sea Suppression Alliance, Wei Sun's attempt to open up the situation in the bewildering world, and the assassination of Wan Fu to delay the advancement of the Sea Clan. The minor ones included Granny Biju's attempt to completely control the myriad immortal sect, and Shun Jitao's attempt to consolidate his reputation as the #1 person among the younger generation in the offshore islands. During this process, the Fishing Sea Tower was also constantly testing Qi's tolerance. The establishment of the Ocean Merit List, this time, directly exposed the threat of the Sea Clan to everyone, and it was actually a chess move to increase the influence of the Sea Suppression Alliance. However, in the Ocean Merit List established by the will of the Fishing Sea Tower, Jiang Wang's achievements couldn't be erased, and he was ranked first on the secondary list. Although he was only ranked first on the secondary list in April, this issue of the Ocean Merit List was, after all, the first issue of the Ocean Merit List. It was a groundbreaking event, and Jiang Wang's name would forever be remembered along with the Ocean Merit List. This was because Jiang Wang was the Tianjiao of Qi. When the Fishing Sea Tower used the pressure of the Sea Clan to expand their influence, they couldn't get rid of Qi. This showed how powerful Qi was. Even Gu Huaixin himself had to admit that the Sea Fishing Tower had been too harsh on Jiang Wang throughout his trip to the Isle of Wight. Wei Sun's behavior could be regarded as a test for the dignity of the Fishing Sea Tower. Under such harsh conditions, he gave Zhu Biqiong a chance to redeem herself. No one could say that there were no rules in the sea-worshipping ceremony. However, Ji Shaoqing maliciously stopped Cheng Gongsheng and the others from saving Zhu Biqiong's life. He also tried his best to delay until the last moment, so that Zhu Biqiong's oil ran out and she would die. This was indeed too much. No matter what kind of grudges Jiang Wang had with them, Wei Sun had already dealt with it by letting Granny Bijou and Jiang Wang kill each other in the bewildering world. No matter what the outcome was, at least on the surface, this matter should be over. This is called decency. Now, Qi's opinion was very clear. Ji Shaoqing was disrespectful first. After Jiang Wang proposed a life-and-death duel, Qi approved of any result. However, if the fishing sea tower still dared to interfere in this fair life-and-death duel, he would regard it as a challenge to Qi's dignity. He would go to the sea personally and teach the fishing sea tower the rules. Once that person made a move, it could be regarded as a war between countries. If Qi really used this as an excuse, the Qi Tianjiao, with a fourth-class blue medal at his waist and a title of nobility in Qingyang town, could be regarded as a worthy teacher. How could the fishing sea tower accept this? Qi's status as the overlord of the eastern region was not just because of flattery. The number of countries and sects that fell under Qi's army was countless. Gu Huaixin was furious with Ji Shaoqing because his behavior was too imprudent. It was very detrimental to his future development. People would never trust an extreme and narrow-minded leader. He taught Ji Shaoqing a lesson because of this. However, he really didn't expect that this matter would actually alarm that person to speak up. So much so that this battle of life and death between the two youths really had a cruel nature of life and death to both sides. And he could not deny it. Gu Huaixin was silent for a long time before he said, "Shaoqing is the disciple I value the most." Su Xiangwan said, "If he rejects the duel, no one can force him. If anyone wants to assassinate him, they will have to die on Crescent Moon Island. We do have the confidence to do so." Su Xiangwan, or rather, Wei Sun's meaning was very clear. Ji Shaoqing had to be responsible for his own actions. As the saying went, one should bear the consequences of one's own actions. Ji Shaoqing had expressed similar intentions to Gu Huaixin before. However, those were just words of anger. If he really encountered a life-and-death situation, how could he not mention Gu Huaixin's name? How could Gu Huaixin not care about him? Moreover, Su Xiangwan continued, "I think Shaoqing has a high chance of winning. If that person opens his eyes because of this, he might be slapped in the face." Gu Huaixin naturally knew that Ji Shaoqing had a high chance of winning. Otherwise, why would Ji Shaoqing agree to a life-and-death duel? He was not an idiot. The reason he was dissatisfied was that he did not want his personal disciple to take any risks. After all, Jiang Wang was a rare Tianjiao. Moreover, he had just proven his killing ability in the bewildering world. Although Ji Shaoqing had a high chance of winning, it was not impossible for him to lose. However, he suddenly thought of something. Even if Ji Shaoqing had indeed taken the initiative to target Jiang Wang and cause Zhu Biqiong to suffer until her death, as long as he did not agree to the duel, Jiang Wang still could not do anything to him. This was the advantage of being the host. This was the prestige of fishing sea tower occupying the islands near the sea. Did the young man named Jiang Wang think of this? Did he put aside everything else and not mention the matter of the Tianya stage? Did he only use the name of seeking the Tao to challenge him to a life-and-death duel? Under extreme anger and hatred, he could still maintain such a clear judgment. How outstanding was his temperament? In this duel, more importantly, where did this person's confidence come from? Jiang Wang's first divine power is the true Samadhi fire. What about the other two divine powers? Gu Huaixin asked, "What are they?" Su Xiangwan shook her head. "I know about the same thing as you." This young man hit it very well. His second divine power has never been revealed in front of anyone. His third divine power was just acquired not long ago. Who would know? Gu Huaixin thought that the Tower Master had once used Jiang Wang as a chess piece in the bewildering world. Perhaps he had seen Jiang Wang's battle and knew what his second divine power was. However, a figure like the Tower Master would definitely disdain to leak information about a junior's duel. Moreover, in a place like the bewildering world, even a Tao manifestation realm cultivator might not be able to see through everything. After all, the Tower Master was planning something big at that time. He could not have used too much power in the bewildering world and let the sea race experts notice. He looked at Su Xiangwan, who was sitting cross-legged in front of him, and asked in his heart, "Su Xiangwan, does this matter have anything to do with you? Is this your counterattack?" However, he only said, "Are we still playing?" "Of course." Su Xiangwan took out another chess piece. "If you still want to continue, of course we have to finish the game. There's a beginning and an end. They had been playing chess for too long. During Su Xiangwan's long examination, Gu Huaixin said expressionlessly, although Xiaoqing reaped what he sowed and ended up in a life-and-death gamble with someone in his own territory, this is still a matter of life and death. After all, this is still considered my sacrifice. The sect was pressured by Qi to prevent Gu Huaixin from covering up for his personal disciple. Naturally, this could be considered a sacrifice. Su Xiangwan put down the chess piece seriously and said, "Whatever happened on the world's edge stage will stay on the world's edge stage. We won't bother about it anymore." In other words, Gu Huaixin's faction did not need to sacrifice themselves for the world's edge stage. Gu Huaixin nodded and agreed. This move forced Su Xiangwan into a dead end. Su Xiangwan pondered for a while. She could not help but rub the chess piece again and again. She asked, "What do you plan to do?" Gu Huaixin also looked at the chess game and said casually, "I'll put in a lot of capital. I'll prepare soul-preserving methods and life-returning treasures. I'll give it to them fairly. However, even if it's a life-and-death battle, it's not like they won't allow anyone to save them after they die. Reviving the dead, changing life and death, and reversing fate were already beyond the scope of a true master's abilities." It was no wonder that Gu Huaixin said he was putting in a lot of capital. Su Xiangwan shook her head. Xiaoqing might not lose. She knew Ji Xiaoqing's strength. Therefore, she felt that Gu Huaixin did not need to put in a lot of capital. Gu Huaixin was expressionless. Whether he wins or loses is his business. Leaving a way out for him is his master's business. Chapter 944. In front of the encampment of the fishing sea tower, Ji Xiaoqing looked around and said with a smile, "We can't fight here. How about we move to the world's edge stage?" To be honest, he didn't want to fight here mainly because he didn't want Chun Jitao to be in the limelight again. While they were fighting for their lives here, Chun Jitao had single-handedly controlled the battlefield, firmly suppressing the aftershocks of the battle. Although everyone knew that Chun Jitao, who was in the divine descent realm, was stronger than them, such a stark comparison made them pale in comparison. Secondly, they could buy some time and let their master know about this. If they won, everyone would be happy. If they lost, they couldn't care less about their reputation. He had agreed to Jiang Wang's life and death challenge for two reasons. Firstly, he had to accept the challenge for the sake of his reputation and face. Secondly, he wanted to step on Jiang Wang's reputation and raise his reputation. Naturally, the battle on the Tianya stage would attract more attention. Jiang Wang said, "Let's go to the world's edge stage." He didn't have any objections. Zhu Biqiang was judged on the world's edge stage and spent the last of her life there. The world's edge stage started and ended there. The news of the life-and-death duel between Jiang Wang and Ji Xiaoqing quickly spread throughout the Isle of Wight and to the entire offshore archipelago. One was the new #1 on the ocean merit list, and the other was the famous fishing sea tower of Tianjiao. They were both young and had a bright future. They were both cultivators with magical powers. One had 3 palaces, and the other had 5. Most importantly, one was from Qi, and the other was a cultivator from Fishing Sea Tower. To some extent, this duel could be seen as a microcosm of the battle between Qi and Fishing Sea Tower for supremacy on the sea. When it was made public, it gave this duel more meaning. Countless eyes were focused on the world's edge stage. On the world's edge stage, the two stood opposite each other. All the spectators stayed outside the world's edge stage. They floated in the air, guarded the steps, or observed from afar with secret techniques. In short, they couldn't step on the world's edge stage. Cheng Gongsheng had requested the black armored warriors to leave. He was worried that there would be any factors that would affect the fairness of the duel. If there were any black armored soldiers who were willing to risk universal condemnation and disregard everything to launch an ambush during the final battle, it would be too late to cut them into 1,000 pieces afterwards. In the territory of the Ocean Fishing Tower, they could only ask for fairness. Chen Jitao, the eldest senior brother of Fishing Sea Tower, and Jiang Wuyo, the palace master of the Qi's Huaying Palace, were the witnesses of this duel. They each inspected the battleground. Jiang Wuyo was the one who did the inspection. After that, they looked at each other and confirmed that the other party had no objections to the location of the duel. Therefore, Chen Jitao said, "Cultivation is to seek the truth. It is difficult to defy fate." Today, Ji Shaoqing and Jiang Wang have diverged from each other on the path of Dao and have challenged each other to a duel. Chen Jitao and all of you will bear witness to this. Victory or defeat is determined by oneself, and there is no resentment in life or death. No matter what the reason was in private, no matter how big the conflict was, at least for now, it was common knowledge that the human race should unite to resist the sea race. Neither Fishing Sea Tower nor did Qi intended to put the conflict on the table. Therefore, the name of this duel was Diverge from Each Other on the Path of Dao. The two had irreconcilable differences in their cultivation philosophies, so they agreed to a duel to prove who was right and who was wrong with life and death. This was also the reason why Chen Jitao and Jiang Wuyo were the witnesses. Their status was high enough, and it was not suitable for people of higher seniority to appear. Jiang Wuyo continued, "This duel is not only about victory and defeat, but also about life and death. No one is allowed to interfere in this duel in any way. Otherwise, you will be an enemy of Fishing Sea Tower and also of the Qi." She nodded slightly at the two people on the Tianya stage and said, "Please." Chen Jitao, who was high in the sky, did the same at the same time. The ancient etiquette of a duel to the death was very complicated, and they tried to be as concise as possible. The reason why it was so formal was to make this duel more ceremonial and convincing. Ji Shaoqing stood on the west side of the Tianya stage, with his back to the Hawaii Island. Jiang Wang stood on the east side of the Tianya stage, with his back to the sea. There was nothing between the two of them. On the Tianya stage, there was only each other. In Ji Shaoqing's eyes, Jiang Wang saw mockery and pleasure. Perhaps it was a disguise, an emotion that was only fake to anger Jiang Wang. But it was not important. In Jiang Wang's eyes, Ji Shaoqing saw nothing. The killing intent was hidden in the heart, and the sword intent was hidden in the scabbard. After Jiang Wuyo and Chen Jitao announced the start of the duel, both sides moved at the same time. The flame sparrows rose in flocks, constantly chirping. Jiang Wang started with the 8 sounds of burning the sea, and the sea of fire and sound waves spread rapidly, covering the entire Tianya stage in an instant. And behind Ji Shaoqing, a new moon suddenly rose. Jiang Wang went to Fishing Sea Tower's encampment to invite the duel at dawn, and it was still daytime. But when a moon rose, at least in the sky above the Tianya stage, it was already nighttime. It was a bright crescent moon hanging high in the sky, cold and frosty. But no moonlight fell, as if the moonlight only existed in the moon. It also seemed that this crescent moon did not belong to this world. But the moment it appeared, the sea of fire that was wreaking havoc on the Tianya stage immediately decreased in intensity. This was a terrifying suppression. Divine ability, Crescent Moon. One of its effects was to strengthen water elemental arts and suppress the other elemental energies. It sounded ordinary, but it was actually very powerful. This was because the extent of its suppression was very impressive. Under the influence of the Crescent Moon, an A-grade high-grade fire elemental Dao technique would at most have the power of a B-grade high-grade elemental Dao technique. And the extent of its enhancement. When the new moon rose, Ji Shaoqing raised his hand, and the roaring water elemental energy surged into the shape of a dragon. Under the illumination of the moonlight, a water dragon immediately surged out. The water dragon roared and controlled the raging waves, instantly extinguishing the sea of fire that was already on the verge of collapse. The dragon roared and collided with the sound waves of the 8 notes burning sea, engulfing it as well. Although the musical assassination technique was not suppressed by the crescent moon, the roaring flame sparrow was completely suppressed. The moon hung high in the sky, and the waves roared. 1,000 miles of frost and endless cold autumn. This was the A-grade mid-grade Dao technique, Water Dragon Roar. It was known as 1,000 miles of clear autumn. Water follows the sky. Endless autumn. It was a powerful area of effect Dao technique and was one of the strongest inner palace Dao techniques in the Fishing Sea Tower's secret storehouse, A-grade mid-grade. In terms of power, it was almost comparable to an A-grade high-grade Dao technique. But compared to the 8 notes burning sea that Jiang Wang had created and mastered in advance, it was still slightly weaker. But at this moment, when the crescent moon hung high in the sky, the water dragon roar easily extinguished the 8 notes burning sea. In an instant, the home ground changed. The Tianya stage was already a world of water. The sound waves of the sea of fire just now seemed to be an illusion. Jiang Wang pressed out a ball of true samadhi fire with one hand and faced the dragon head of one of the water dragons, burning it from head to tail. Then he stepped in the air, crushed the blue cloud mark, and landed behind the other water dragon, directly approaching Ji Shaoqing. Ji Shaoqing had already watched the battle between Bao Song and Jiang Wang, so he had a certain understanding of Jiang Wang. This was the advantage before the battle. Those who truly knew how to fight would never let go of any advantage. Therefore, Ji Shaoqing directly skipped the probing stage and used his magical power in the first confrontation, forcing Jiang Wang to leave the probing stage and fight back with his magical power. This was, of course, the correct way to fight. Jiang Wang only knew him from hearsay, and he had the advantage of home ground. Before Jiang Wang forced him out, he had already seen Jiang Wang's battle with his own eyes. Although the battle had ended very quickly, a true expert would naturally be able to obtain the information he wanted. On the other hand, Jiang Wang directly skipped the long-distance confrontation and chose to fight to the death in close quarters. When he passed by the water dragon roar, he threw a question to Ji Shaoqing. "Haven't you already watched my battle? In a small space, life and death will be decided in an instant. Do you still dare to? I believe in your judgment. P.S. Chu Tian's clear autumn for 1,000 miles. The water goes with the sky. Autumn is endless." Xian Chiji's water dragon roar, ascending the admiring heart pavilion in Jiankong. Chapter 945. Ji Shaoqing did not dare to believe it. As cautious as he was, he had only watched one battle, and the information he obtained was limited. He would not rely on it as a life-or-death trump card. At the same time, there was no need for him to fight Jiang Wang. Therefore, he retreated. The water rippled like snow, and there were 3 waves. His figure retreated quickly. Jiang Wang advanced on the clouds, and he retreated on the waves. The two of them still maintained a relative distance between them. At the same time, Ji Shaoqing raised his hand and used the water dragon roar again. Although both sides were using divine abilities, his crescent moon hung high in the sky and was a continuous divine ability. He would not be at a disadvantage if he used the water dragon roar to exhaust Jiang Wang's samadhi true fire and Dao techniques to exhaust divine abilities. The water dragon roar supported by the crescent moon was not easy to deal with. In a sense, it had already surpassed the power of an A-grade high-grade Dao technique and was close to a super-grade yellow-grade Dao technique. Behind him, a water dragon was chasing after him, and 2 more water dragons collided with him. Waves surged beneath his feet, surging with momentum. Jiang Wang stepped on the clouds and coincidentally turned around between the 2 water dragons. The immortal technique, Meteoric Rise, allowed him to advance instead of retreating, closing the distance between him and Ji Shaoqing. Another dragon roar sounded. Ji Shaoqing used the water dragon roar again. There was no strongest Dao technique, only the most suitable Dao technique. The water dragon roar was an instant cast Dao technique that he had engraved in the 5th inner mansion. Under the influence of the crescent moon, it was stronger, consumed less Dao energy, and lasted longer. He could dodge 2 or 3 water dragons easily, but what about 3 for even 5 or 6 water dragons? When the momentum fell, the mountains would collapse. He wanted to use the water dragon roar to exhaust Jiang Wang to death. The world's edge stage was packed with people. Almost all the positions that could be watched from a close distance were occupied by curious onlookers. Of course, this was the home ground of the ocean fishing tower. People looked at Chung Gung Sheng, Li Long Chuan, and the other Chi people with unfriendly gazes. The new moon hung high in the sky. The waves surged, and the 5 water dragons roaring at the world's edge stage made them very excited. Jiang Wang turned around quickly, and his right hand's finger was already burning with samadhi true fire. This kind of consumption was exactly what Ji Shaoqing wanted. The 5 water dragons flew back and forth, chasing each other endlessly. The tiny Jiang Wang moved left and right in the middle of the water dragons, walking calmly. Which water dragon would he choose to burn first? Which water dragon would be the best way to open up the situation? These thoughts flashed through Ji Shaoqing's mind, but he didn't think too deeply about it, because there was no need to. He raised his hand and unleashed another water dragon roar. The battle had just started, but it had already reached its climax. Ji Shaoqing had unleashed 4 water dragon roars. On the Tianya stage, the sound of the tide became more urgent and the waves became fiercer. There were a total of 7 huge water dragons, almost locking down all directions. However, the true samadhi fire burning in Jiang Wang's right hand was still in his palm and had not been released. At the critical moment when the 7 water dragons were about to surround him, he flipped his left palm and a crystal-clear glass bottle appeared out of thin air, directly sucking all the water dragons into it. It was the cloud musuin he got from Granny Bijou. This treasure can store water and raise fish. It was a treasure for raising beasts, and also a treasure for controlling water. It had once stored the water of rivers and was filled with the essence of water. It could easily trap the extremely poisonous and fast 5-colored fish. It was appropriate to use it to deal with the water dragon roar. Jiang Wang didn't use it earlier or later, but he used it at this moment to catch Ji Shaoqing off guard. Ji Shaoqing had used Bao Song to meet his 8 notes burning the sea and true samadhi fire, which could be considered a step ahead. He had used the true samadhi fire that Ji Shaoqing had already seen and deliberately exchanged, taking the initiative to suffer a small loss to win himself a temporary advantage. This made Ji Shaoqing think that he had no better way to deal with the water dragon roar and could only use the true samadhi fire. Then, Yin Muzuin appeared, and the 7 majestic water dragons were instantly sucked in. The space between him and Ji Shaoqing was empty. Stepping on the green clouds, he was already in front of Ji Shaoqing. Ji Shaoqing had unleashed 4 water dragon roars in a row. Even with the crescent moon's influence, it was inevitable that he would consume a lot of energy. When he saw Yin Muzuin, his eyelids couldn't help but twitch, filled with hatred and anger. This was Granny Bijou's treasure. Before she died, she didn't manage to destroy it in time, which benefited Jiang Wang. He had indeed suffered a loss in this round, but facing Jiang Wang, who was closing in on him, he still showed no fear. He only raised a finger and pointed at the sky. The crescent moon hanging in the sky suddenly turned and faced Jiang Wang. The second form of the crescent moon's supernatural power was activated. It was undeniable that Jiang Wang had indeed brought about a great deal of pressure. Ji Shaoqing had also brought out his trump card. At least, this form of the crescent moon's supernatural power had never appeared in front of anyone before. The vertical side of the crescent moon was in the night sky, and the back of the crescent moon was facing Jiang Wang. Endless moonlight appeared. It was as if the moonlight that had been imprisoned in the crescent moon was suddenly released. The moonlight was like arrows, rapidly landing on the ground and shooting towards Jiang Wang. The crescent moon was the bow, and the light was the arrow. 10,000 arrows pierced the heart. How fast was the moonlight? When you saw the moonlight, you were already illuminated by it. Jiang Wang's action of approaching Ji Shaoqing seemed to be welcoming this round of attacks from the crescent moon. His entire body was densely nailed by the crescent moon's arrows on the spot. Smack! It was shattered. The red makeup mirrors illusory body. Ji Shaoqing, indeed, didn't expect that someone would dare to play an illusion in front of the fishing sea tower's cultivators. What he didn't expect even more was that he had actually been deceived. After the shattered, illusory body, Jiang Wang, who had curled up into a ball, suddenly stretched out. He was like a ferocious beast that had been curled up for a long time, suddenly opening its sharp claws and fangs. He hated Ji Shaoqing to the core, but he would never underestimate him. If Ji Shaoqing was a weakling, even if he had the fishing sea tower to rely on, how would he dare to openly take revenge on him? He took the initiative and chose to curl up behind the illusory body to charge forward, in order to welcome Ji Shaoqing's possible follow-up attack. It was also because of this choice of spirituality that he happened to block the crescent moon's arrows. He didn't know how powerful the crescent moon's arrows were and how many arrows he could withstand. But Jiang Wang wasn't willing to try. He rushed out from behind the shattered illusory body and charged toward Ji Shaoqing in a completely unobstructed and undisguised manner. At this moment, it was daytime outside the world's edge stage, and a bright moon was hanging high above the stage. Above their heads was Ji Shaoqing's crescent moon, while below them were the raging waves caused by the water dragon's roar. Jiang Wang rushed toward Ji Shaoqing face to face, his hand on the sword hilt and his gaze on the other party. No one doubted what kind of earth-shattering sword he would pull out. The fishing sea tower's cultivators outside the stage held their breaths. The rhythm of the battle changed too quickly. Ji Shaoqing had a complete advantage just now, but in the blink of an eye, it seemed like the tables were about to be turned. Ji Shaoqing was proficient in water element Dao techniques, but among the instantaneous Dao techniques he had engraved, the strongest was the water dragon's roar, which had been perfectly countered by Yun Muzuan. His illusion techniques were also very exquisite, but from the impeccable illusory body just now, he didn't intend to use his illusion techniques in a battle with Jiang Wang. Once the illusion technique was seen through, it was almost as if he had personally given away his chance of victory. The crescent moon's arrows needed to be accumulated, and it couldn't be as limitless as the bright moon. At this moment, the first round of arrows was over, and it was still buffering. Jiang Wang was like a ferocious tiger leaping down from a hill, about to devour his opponent. In the eyes of many, this might be an unsolvable situation. But to those who truly understood Ji Shaoqing, this was just the beginning. Rumble. The moment Jiang Wang approached, in the sky, in the void, a door seemed to have opened at the position facing the world's edge stage. It was an ancient and mysterious door that seemed to be made of stone. This door opened from the top to the bottom. It was as if a hand from beyond the heavens had pushed the door open and seen the world. Divine ability, Heaven's Gate. When it opened from the top to the bottom, flying was prohibited. Jiang Wang's charging figure fell from the sky. Chapter 946. Gu Huaixin was a perfected master with countless disciples. Why did he think so highly of Ji Shaoqing and even rely on him for his legacy? Fishing Sea Tower was a big business. Although there weren't many cultivators who could master two supernatural powers, it wasn't impossible to find them. Why was Ji Shaoqing named Tianjiao? Why did Ji Shaoqing dare to take revenge on Jiang Wang, a Qi Tianjiao who killed Granny Bijou and more than 100 commander-level Sea Race commanders? It was because of the supernatural power of Tianmen. The so-called Tianmen was the gate to heaven. This terrifying supernatural power had two ways of opening it. When it opened from top to bottom, it would create a no-fly effect and prevent the opponent from flying. It was like sealing the opponent's gate to heaven. After transcendent cultivators had the soaring dragon in their Dao veins, they had the ability to fly physically. After that, all their battles would be carried out by flying in the sky or diving into the ground. Once flying was forbidden, it was almost like an ordinary person was crippled. When it opened from bottom to top, it could temporarily break through a small realm. Of course, it also had a limit. It couldn't break through a big realm. For example, when one was in the 5 prefectures, they couldn't ascend to the outer tower. But it was already terrifying. This ability would become stronger the further one progressed. When one opened the Tianmin in the inner mansion, they could have one more mansion's combat power than the opponent. When one opened the outer tower, they could have one more mansion's combat power. What about after the divine descent and perfected masters? The Tianmin was already a top-level supernatural power, but it had an even more terrifying future. In the ancient records, there was another divine ability called Earth's Gate. The Earth Gate was the gate to Earth. When it opened from bottom to top, it prohibited the use of Soul Taoist techniques. When it opened from top to bottom, it poured the opponent's Tao energy. There was no need to elaborate on how powerful these two effects were. The most terrifying thing was, when the Tianmin and Earth Gate were combined, they could form one of the top-level supernatural powers, the Heaven and Earth Gate. It could even be understood as the Heaven and Earth Gate that reaching heaven cultivators had to open when they ascended to the inner mansion. Because the Heaven and Earth Gate could indeed prohibit transcendent cultivators to a certain extent. It was equivalent to closing the Heaven and Earth Gate that one had painstakingly opened when they ascended to the soaring dragon realm. However, the Tianmin were already rare in the world, and the Earth Gate only had sporadic records in history. Ji Shaoqing had been exploring the fifth residence for a long time in search of the legendary Earth's Gate sacred art. Once he found it, he would immediately become the number 1 Tianjiao of the Fishing Sea Tower. Even if it was Chun Ji Tao, unless he could always maintain an absolute lead in terms of cultivation level, he would still have to lower his head. Unfortunately, Ji Shaoqing had already touched the threshold of the outer building realm and could touch the starry sky, but there was still no sign of the legendary Earth's Gate's supernatural power. It was almost impossible to achieve the Heaven and Earth's Gate supernatural power. However, just the Divine Gate ability alone was enough to make his name Tianjiao. Was there any need to say more about the power of this divine ability? What kind of person was Jiang Wang? How terrifying was his talent in battle? It was not easy for him to escape the dangerous situation and gain the upper hand, but when he revealed his ferocious state, he was like a bird with broken wings, falling down in front of Ji Shaoqing. This scene was too shocking. There were many people who knew that Ji Shaoqing had plucked 2 divine ability seeds, but very few had actually seen these 2 divine abilities. A crescent moon was already considered powerful. Once the Heaven's Gate's supernatural power was used, it was almost enough to make people despair. At first glance, the prohibition of flying did not seem too scary, but those who were truly proficient in battle understood how huge of a disadvantage it was. Being prohibited from flying meant that the space to move was greatly restricted and could only be limited to the ground. In a battle between experts, it was almost equivalent to losing the space to dodge. Because there were only so many possibilities, every move one made would be calculated to death. If a Heaven Ascension Realm cultivator wanted to challenge a Soaring Dragon Realm cultivator, they would usually have to rely on surprise attacks, close in on the opponent before they could fly up, or lure the opponent to land. This was because the difference between those who could fly and those who could not was too great in battle. Outside the arena, the Fishing Sea Tower cultivators were excited, but Jiang Wang's friends were nervous and uneasy. In the crowd, someone transmitted his voice and asked, "That gate is..." The person who asked the question was wearing a cloak and a black robe, looking very mysterious. Beside him, a similarly dressed person said, "Heaven's Gate." This was a female voice, and it was bone-chilling. In that case, the person in front nodded and suddenly said, "Let's go. You don't want to watch anymore?" The cold female voice asked, "You came all the way here just to take a few glances. There's no point in watching anymore. No matter what the result is, this battle isn't something we can interfere with. So, if we have the chance, we'll just listen to the result." The male voice transmitted his voice and left the crowd without leaving a trace. This bone-chilling voice didn't seem to be filled with curiosity, but she was indeed very curious, so she asked, "Do you mean you really want to help him if you can? You don't seem like someone who cares so much about friendship." "It's worth it to help him," the male voice replied simply. Then, the two of them left silently. They came quietly and left quietly, On the Tianya stage, Ji Shaoqing used the Heaven's Gate divine power and suppressed Jiang Wang, who was closing in on him to the ground. Of course, he wanted to take advantage of the situation and attack. He immediately raised a finger and pointed it at the sky. The crescent moon was activated again. Just as the arrow of endless moon was about to shoot, Jiang Wang suddenly moved. The blue cloud mark under his feet flashed and disappeared. His falling body suddenly stopped and flew back rapidly. He was even closer than before. Everyone, including Ji Shaoqing himself, was shocked. Jiang Wang wasn't affected by the Heaven's Gate divine powers restriction of flying. The Heaven's Gate divine powers restriction of flying was equivalent to pulling back a cultivator from breaking through the heaven and earth gates barrier. It took back the ability to fly physically and prohibited the possibility of flying using Taoist magic arts. However, the one step to heaven didn't rely on the physical body to float in the air, nor was it an ordinary Taoist magic art. It was a unique immortal art system during the 9 Great Immortal Palaces era, relying on Shu Jie. Perhaps when the Heaven's Gate divine power was developed to a high level, it could block all possibilities of flying. But at least at Ji Shaoqing's current level, he couldn't suppress Shu Jie. For example, breaking one's legs was a way to stop one from running. But breaking one's legs couldn't stop the other party from running on a horse. Shu Jie was like this horse, carrying Jiang Wang who had lost his legs and flying. Thus, he wasn't affected by the Heaven's Gate divine power. Jiang Wang immediately felt the effects of the Heaven's Gate divine power, but he didn't resist. Instead, he went with the flow and fell. Because a divine power like the Heaven's Gate divine power was definitely the caster's trump card, an existence used to determine the outcome of a battle. Ji Shaoqing must be very confident in it, and his fall was to let Ji Shaoqing confirm the effects of the divine power, to feel that the situation was under his control, and to choose to attack instead of defend. The astral path could achieve this goal more easily, but he didn't want to show the astral path in front of everyone, because a divine power like the astral path, once exposed, would lose its most terrifying nature. Even if the astral path's activation left no trace, there might be people who saw it clearly. However, he used his own performance in battle to make Ji Shaoqing misjudge. Even if he didn't use the astral path, he still had the merit of the astral path. Chapter 9:47. These calculations in battle seemed slow, but they happened in the blink of an eye. Just as Ji Shaoqing raised his finger, Jiang Wang's falling figure flew up again. The green clouds were crushed. Under the suppression of the Heaven Gate, he still took a step and arrived in front of Ji Shaoqing. In the secret place, Gu Huaixin stood up and lost his composure. So, it's a celestial technique. With a turn of his feet, he disappeared. The era of the 9 great celestial palaces had passed too long ago. It was so long that it was almost forgotten by the world. Even Gu Huaixin, an expert of the insight realm, could not immediately detect the origin of one step to heaven. Seeing that the Heaven Gates technique could not suppress Jiang Wang, he made the connection and lost his composure. Looking at the chessboard that could not be reversed, Su Xiangwan suddenly sighed. In the past, the immeasurable prison and Fu Tu died. I thought it was the time for them to decline. But by the looks of it now, the geniuses of the Qi country were still at the peak of their power. Although we can't retreat, aren't we a bit too impatient? No one could answer him. On the Tianya stage, Jiang Wang finally unsheathed his sword under everyone's gazes. Clang! It was an extremely intense and decisive cry. It was a killing intent that had been suppressed for a long time. This cry caused the listeners to feel cold all over, as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Hearing the sword cry, one could tell the intensity of the killing intent. Seeing the edge of the sword, one could tell the determination of the killing intent. The long sword with its unique sharpness was finally unsheathed. It was like a setting sun falling from the sky and into the mortal world. The sword of an old general past his prime. Jiang Wang chose this sword. Among all the sword moves of the human Tao, this was the most tragic and tragic sword move. The setting sun burned away its afterglow, and the hero burned past his prime. It was to press forward and never look back. At the end of one's life, it burned the most passionately. But at this moment, it was different. A wisp of wind was wrapped around the sword. The wind was frosty white, almost merging with the sword light. It was difficult to distinguish the two. Northwest Buzhou wind, mainly killing. Jiang Wang used the uniqueness of the celestial technique to successfully deceive Ji Shaoqing and win the opportunity to use this sword move. Of course, he had to make the most of it. Without any hesitation, he unleashed his third theurgy, the Buzhou wind. Facing Jiang Wang's sword, Ji Shaoqing was shocked. As the trump card that he had always relied on the most, he was completely unwilling to believe that the heavenly gates had lost its effectiveness. Moreover, his opponent's sword was so ruthless and swift that he no longer had any room to dodge. But it didn't matter. Amidst the myriad of thoughts, there was one that was emphasized in his mind. The moon arrow arrived as soon as it was shot, giving Jiang Wang less than a breath of time. This time, he would definitely not give the other party a chance to deceive him with an illusion. Before the moon arrow fell, the black brocade robe he was wearing was enough to protect him. This was something that had been proven in countless battles in the past. This robe was called the Black Sea, and it was the robe that Gu Huaixin used in his early years. As long as he was near the water, he would be able to establish a connection and become one with the water. He would be able to transfer the damage he received. Just like the boundless sea, it could contain infinitely. Once it was nurtured, it could withstand at least 10 attacks. The Tianya stage was at the seaside. The reason he chose to fight here was to better utilize the Black Sea robe. Before Jiang Wang's sword came, boom, the waves below the cliff suddenly roared. An illusion of a surging sea appeared in front of Ji Shaoqing. It was spectacular and majestic, as if it could block everything. But the wind blew. Whoosh! It was an indescribable sound of the wind. It was cold, desolate, and chilling to the heart. The frosty white wind blew gently, and the illusion of the surging sea disappeared. Ji Shaoqing discovered in horror that the Black Sea robe on his body seemed to be unable to withstand the ravages of time. It suddenly shattered into countless pieces and rustled to the ground. Among the spectators, there were those who had a wide field of vision who saw that a huge hole suddenly appeared in the roaring sea below the Tianya stage. A large part of the surging waves that should have been there was instantly annihilated by some unknown force. The Black Sea robe had indeed established a connection with the sea not far away, and indeed transferred a huge amount of damage. But at the same time, it would inevitably bear a part of the force. But just this little bit of the power of the wind had already blown it to pieces. What was the wind of killing? When the wind blew, all the grass would be cut. It was the so-called frost killing all the grass. Ji Shaoqing could almost smell the breath of death. He felt as if the biting cold wind was blowing on his face. The end of the world had come, and death was near. No, he expelled the murderous intent that had entered his heart first, and instantly regained his consciousness. With a thought, a total of 9 Ji Shaoqing escaped in different directions. It was the instantaneous Taoist technique engraved in the fourth inner mansion, the water sense spirit. This technique could be called an exquisite illusion technique. Although it was known that Jiang Wang's illusion technique was amazing, it was still good to delay him for a moment. Then, a huge whirlpool suddenly appeared in the surging waves that he had gathered with the water dragon's roar. It started to spin crazily. The spinning speed became faster and faster, and almost all the waves were swirled together. It was the instantaneous Taoist technique engraved in the third inner mansion, the water sense dragon. The strong suction force pulled all the Ji Shaoqing's water sense spirit that had manifested into a certain distance away. Ji Shaoqing used this technique not to kill the enemy, but to help himself, who was already unable to escape, by a little more. His response was effective. The red makeup mirror indeed allowed Jiang Wang to illuminate everything on the Tianya stage and accurately capture Ji Shaoqing's real body. But because of the water sense dragon's pull, His sword could no longer penetrate Ji Shaoqing's vital parts, so he could only make a prompt decision and use the sword of the famous scholar, drawing a neat arc. Because it was too sharp, there was almost no sound. Because it was too straightforward, there was almost no feeling. Ji Shaoqing did not feel pain until the broken finger that should not have been erected flew high in front of him. The sharp pain only occurred for a moment, and then he became numb. For a powerhouse like Ji Shaoqing, he naturally quickly found the reason. The flesh and blood of the wound that was drawn by the sword was losing its vitality at an extremely terrifying speed. The wind was blowing. He mobilized a huge amount of Taoist energy to collide with it, and only then was he able to expel the extremely pure, murderous intent in an instant. The price was that the broken finger that was originally only half broken had now exploded. When the finger exploded and the blood mist exploded, Ji Shaoqing's entire body also exploded. He exploded into countless water droplets and directly fell into the waves that were being swept up by the water-sensed dragon under his feet, disappearing without a trace. With this move, he avoided Jiang Wang's further attack. It cannot be said that he had miscalculated. After all, he had saved his life and successfully escaped when it was almost impossible. However, after Jiang Wang cut off his finger that was moving the divine power, he did not chase after him at all. Instead, he shattered the green clouds with one foot and soared high into the sky. He faced the crescent moon directly. Huff! He gently exhaled, and a wisp of frosty white wind landed on the bright moon just like that. The moonlight shattered. The entire crescent moon, hanging high in the sky, directly exploded. The moon arrow that was ready to be shot naturally disappeared without a trace. Jiang Wang did not chase after Ji Shaoqing, but targeted his divine power. He blew out the wind. He collided with the divine power with the divine power. He blew the crescent moon apart. The night that shrouded the sky above the Tianya stage was dispelled just like that. The rising sun shone brightly in the sky for thousands of miles, and the heaven and earth were clear. Jiang Wang turned around and descended from the sky, pressing down with his palm. Chirp, 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 chirp. The sea of fire and the sound waves almost engulfed everything. 8 notes burning the sea. Chapter 948. Ji Shaoqing was from a famous family in Tianjiao. His sect was one of the biggest sects in the world, and his master was a perfected person of the present age. Every step he took was almost perfect. He would do his best beyond the scope of his own efforts and talent. His fighting skills, his main cultivation method, and even the instant cast Taoist techniques engraved in his 5 inner residences must have been carefully matched and most suitable for him. Thus, even in this dangerous situation, he was still able to escape Jiang Wang's Buzhou wind and almost certain death strike. Jiang Wang was also very clear about this. He knew that the opportunity to kill was fleeting, so he was not greedy for credit. After cutting off Ji Shaoqing's finger, he directly turned to the crescent moon and chose to break the supernatural power first. He accumulated advantages and locked in victory. The gate of heaven was in between reality and illusion, so it could not be captured. Since the crescent moon could directly attack the opponent, it was naturally in the real world, so it became a target. A gust of wind blew it to pieces. The crescent moon could not appear in a short time. When Jiang Wang descended from the sky and pressed the 8 notes of burning sea, he was in an advantageous state of 3 residences and 3 supernatural powers against Ji Shaoqing, who only had the supernatural power of the heavenly residence left. And the celestial technique of 1 step to heaven was not afraid of the restriction of the sky. Without the support of the crescent moon, could the water spout withstand the 8 notes of burning sea? The answer was no. On the Tianya stage, the turbulent tornado was diminishing at a speed almost visible to the naked eye. The tornado kept decreasing until Ji Shaoqing had nowhere to hide. Ji Shaoqing jumped out of the almost extinguished water spout. Before the last drop of water was burned dry, he finally revealed himself. But he was not in a sorry state, nor was he at a loss. He directly pulled out his belt, as if he was pulling out a whip. Crack! It almost shattered the air, and the fierce whip directly whipped Jiang Wang back. And the watercolored belt, like a spirit snake, surged up between him and Jiang Wang. It directly broke off on its own and divided into three. Whoosh! They were three small rivers flowing in the air. They did not look majestic, but the turbulent water element in them was a power that could turn the world upside down. The magic tool, Dragon Whisker Belt, complemented by the first Inner Palace's instantaneous secret technique to form the three rivers crossing shore. The Dragon Whisker Belt formed the three rivers, while he and Jiang Wang formed the two shores. If he didn't break the three rivers, Jiang Wang wouldn't be able to attack him. Without the slightest hesitation, he raised his head and looked at the sky. A faint light gradually appeared in the distant starry sky. Borrowing the obstruction of Three Rivers Hengan, he wanted to directly ascend to the outer tower in front of Jiang Wang. The key to upgrading from the inner mansion to the outer mansion was to anchor the first star force in the distant star dome and leave one's mark in the star dome. That was the easiest and most dangerous step to take. The rest was just a matter of grinding. Ji Shaoqing could have ascended to the outer tower long ago, but he was unwilling to give up. He wanted to explore the Earth's Gate and become the #1 Tianjiao of Fishing Ocean Tower. Even though the fifth residence had been turned upside down by him, there was still no trace of a sacred art. However, he still persisted, and Gu Huaixin also agreed with him, because the Heaven and Earth Gate was worth waiting for. No one would be satisfied if they didn't put in all their effort. But at this moment, he knew that he couldn't wait any longer. Because it was very likely that there would be no future, this wasn't necessarily a bad thing for Ji Shaoqing. Sometimes, only by letting go of the present could one obtain a broader future. It was equivalent to this battle dispelling his obsession. The power of his spirit established a connection with the distant star dome. According to the highest secret technique of Fishing Ocean Tower, he rapidly built his own star tower. Boom! At the same time, the ancient Heaven's Gate that existed between reality and illusion closed with a loud bang. Then it opened again, but from the looks of it, the Heaven's Gate opened from the bottom up this time. When the Heaven's Gate's sacred art opened from the bottom up, one would temporarily jump a small realm. In other words, when Ji Shaoqing ascended to the outer tower, he would directly face Jiang Wang with the combat strength of a cultivator from the second tower. That was a crushing difference in their cultivation levels. Everyone realized the seriousness of the problem. The Three Rivers Hengan, evolved from the Dragon Whisker Belt, was almost the key to victory. Being in the situation, Jiang Wang naturally knew that he couldn't let Ji Shaoqing succeed. Secret Treasure of Spark? Open. Secret Treasure of Wind Chasing? Open. Jiang Wang stepped into the air. The azure cloud mark appeared and then disappeared. He had already crashed into the Three Rivers. Facing the slender river that accumulated terrifying power, he directly pressed out the True Samadhi Fire. True Samadhi Fire. True Samadhi Fire. True Samadhi Fire. He pressed out the True Samadhi Fire 3 times in a row. He had used it once when he defeated Bao Song. In order to deceive Ji Shaoqing, he started to break the water dragon chant again. The sacred art seed was scarlet red and slightly swollen. It directly reached its current limit and couldn't be used in a short period of time. But the effect was also very obvious. Using the sacred art of fire to break the water element Dao technique couldn't be more straightforward. The three rivers in front of him stopped flowing on the spot, and he had approached Ji Shaoqing at such a fast speed. Ji Shaoqing's Star Tower had yet to be completed. At first glance, it was a good opportunity. But would someone like Ji Shaoqing place all his hopes on the Three Rivers Hengan formed by the Dragon Whisker Belt? Even if it was really that powerful. Unlike the anxious thoughts of the spectators, Jiang Wang, who had broken through the Three Rivers Hengan, directly activated the spirit concealment snake. There was nothing to think about. He had long obtained the secret technique of the 7-star sacred tower and had a certain understanding of how to build a sacred tower. He knew that to build a star tower in the distant stars, one had to use the power of the spirit as a guide. So he decisively started with the other party spirit. It was the right medicine for the problem. It didn't matter if Ji Shaoqing had set up a backup plan to protect himself. He didn't even probe and directly interrupted his ascension. He was sealing the victory. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Inside Ji Shaoqing's heavenly palace, the snakes hissed. The pitch-black snakes quickly slithered in and attacked Ji Shaoqing's spirit. The spirit wasn't a battlefield for inner-house cultivators. Even a famous Tianjiao, like Ji Shaoqing, felt unfamiliar with a battle at the spirit level. He directly revealed his true form and landed on his Dao vein true spirit. It was a giant dark blue whale, huge and mighty. It directly opened its mouth and sucked countless black snakes into its huge mouth. And among those snakes that couldn't help themselves, Jiang Wang leaped out. Holding the sword spirit of Xiang Si, he slashed horizontally. The blue whale's true spirit was directly slashed open. The intense pain at the spirit level caused Ji Shaoqing to howl in pain in the heavenly palace. His opponent's spirit battle power far exceeded that of an inner-house cultivator. Ji Shaoqing immediately realized this terrifying fact. The star tower that was being built in the distant stars collapsed. He had no choice but to abandon the construction of the star tower and withdraw all his spirit power. In this way, he could use the suppression of the heavenly palace to resist the other party from within his heavenly palace. But Jiang Wang didn't hesitate to disperse his spirit snake and return it to his body. He was the one who knew best just how terrifying Transcendent Palace's suppression of outsiders was. The reason he dared to enter the other party's heavenly palace and even enter the battlefield with the sword spirit of Xiang Si was because he knew what the other party was doing. The spirit was at its weakest. He took advantage of the situation. When Ji Shaoqing's spirit power returned, he didn't want to continue fighting. This entry and exit had already achieved his goal. The battle at the spirit level happened too quickly. The onlookers only saw that Jiang Wang only glanced at Ji Shaoqing after breaking through the three rivers crossing shore. The faint starlight on the horizon suddenly dissipated. It was like a glance had cut off the star tower. Chapter 949. Some people could guess that a battle at the spirit level had taken place just now. This was already shocking enough. Jiang Wang actually had the ability to invade his opponent's Tongtian Palace at the inner mansion stage. Those who were aware of the battle between spirits were even more aware of how terrifying it was. In their eyes, Jiang Wang's true talent was even more terrifying than what he had shown previously. Jiang Wang's future was much longer than previously imagined. Because he could possess such a powerful spirit at the inner mansion stage, it was as if he had already locked onto the glory of the Yunshen Temple. As for those who knew nothing about soul battles or didn't connect the dots at all, they were even more deeply shocked. Ignorance made people fearful. They could not imagine what had happened with that glance to interrupt Ji Shaoqing's ascension to the outer mansion stage. How powerful was this Jiang Wang? However, no matter how the spectators imagined it, be it shock or disdain. Now, the outcome of the battle was already decided. The moment Jiang Wang withdrew from the spirit battle, two pitch-black chains emerged from thin air and entangled Ji Shaoqing. Clang, clang, clang. The chains vibrated and fell into a translucent water prison, making it difficult to enter or exit. Indeed, Ji Shaoqing had hidden a trump card in front of him. If Jiang Wang had attacked rashly and accidentally been trapped in this water prison, he could only watch helplessly as Ji Shaoqing controlled the power of two levels and turn around to kill him easily. But now, he had only lost two chains for a short period of time. He could no longer use the true Samadhi fire, but he still had the Buzhou wind and the astral path that he had been suppressing. And Ji Shaoqing had already used up all his trump cards. Both sides knew the current situation better than anyone else watching from the sidelines. Thus, Ji Shaoqing's eyes could not help but show fear. The moment Xing Lu was forced to stop, he knew that he had lost. However, he still held on to the last shred of hope that Jiang Wang, who had successfully interrupted his ascension, would make a rash move and fall into the trap. That way, he would still have a chance. But now his last shred of hope had been shattered. Jiang Wang's rich battle experience and terrifying battle talent did not seem like a 19-year-old youth at all. Even the slightest chance of victory was gone. This was a duel of life and death. If he begged for mercy, would Jiang Wang let him go? There was no need to ask this question. If he fought with his life on the line, would he still have a chance? There was no more. Therefore, he didn't really have a choice. What face? Honor. When Jiang Wang rushed towards him, Ji Shaoqing immediately turned around and fled into the distance, his body shrouded in a watery light. The crowd was in an uproar. This was a battle of life and death witnessed by all the cultivators present. It could be said that everyone was prepared to die on the world's edge stage. And he, Ji Shaoqing, actually wanted to escape. What a joke. Go back. Jiang Wuyo, who was hovering in the air, flipped his hand and took out a huge halberd. Then he slashed down from above. Woo woo woo. Roar roar roar. In a split second, the winds and clouds changed color, and one could hear the cries of gods and ghosts. Countless phantoms of deities and wraiths circled around the giant halberd. It pressed down on Ji Shaoqing with an earth-shattering might. As one of the notaries of this duel of life and death, Jiang Wuyo had the obligation and power to maintain the order of this duel. That was to say, when Ji Shaoqing chose to escape, she could completely kill him. In terms of cultivation, Jiang Wuyo was only at the inner mansion realm. However, how terrifying was the combat strength of a princess of great Qi, who was qualified to compete for the dragon throne, that she could display? Perhaps this halberd was the answer. Ji Shaoqing, who had used up all his trump cards, widened his eyes in horror and was almost completely powerless to resist. This person's name was Jiang Wuyo, and this halberd was called the Square Heaven Ghost. The dignified Huaying Palace Master had been suppressed in the offshore islands for too long. The wrath of Princess de Qi should be known by everyone. Clang! At this moment, a hand appeared behind him, blocking the Square Heaven Divine Ghost halberd. The wind stopped, the clouds dispersed, the deities disappeared, and the ghosts disappeared. The sky was clear for thousands of miles. The man who appeared in front of Jiang Wuyo had long black and white hair. He didn't even look at Jiang Wuyo. He just turned over his hand and caught the Square Heaven Ghost. Some people present recognized him, while others didn't. Everyone was silent. The fourth elder of the Fishing Sea Tower, Gu Huaixin. Gu Huaixin didn't look at Jiang Wuyo. Instead, he stared at Ji Shaoqing and said, "If you dare to escape, I will kill you with my own hands." These words were harsh, fair, and selfless. He cut off Ji Shaoqing's escape route. But Ji Shaoqing's eyes flashed with joy. Gu Huaixin had come out. Would he still die? Would Jiang Wang dare to kill a perfected master's disciple in front of this perfected master? Why would I escape? He immediately said loudly, "Just now I was baiting the enemy and was about to attack. Why did Princess de Qi attack me? She made my plan go to waste. Is she going to abandon the fairness of this battle?" This reversal of black and white made people speechless. But he said it so indignantly that it made some people suspicious. Yes, Ji Shaoqing had forced his opponent into danger several times before. It wasn't that he didn't have the strength to fight. Why would he escape? In front of so many people, unless he didn't want to lose face, why would he escape? On the other hand, Jiang Wuyo was really making a mountain out of a molehill and taking the opportunity to interfere. Anyway, in the eyes of many cultivators in the offshore islands, the people of Qi were unreasonable. Faced with the obstruction of a perfected master, no matter how strong Jiang Wuyo was, he couldn't do anything. No matter how high her status was, this was not the Qi territory. She hated Ji Shaoqing's counterattack so much that she wanted to fight to the death with him. But that hand blocked in front of her like a mountain, like a city. At this moment, Jiang Wang spoke. "You dare to turn your back to me." His sword was like a stream of light, piercing straight at Ji Shaoqing. His response was very simple. He didn't want to waste his breath on Ji Shaoqing. "Didn't you say you didn't want to escape? Then very well, The battle is still going on. I still want to kill you, even if Gu Huaixin is present. Ji Shaoqing hurriedly turned around. Whoosh, a gust of wind blew over. It directly shattered his protective water light. Ji Shaoqing lowered his body and retreated. He saw that his hair had been cut off by his sword. If he had been a moment slower, his head would have been cut off. He had completely understood Jiang Wang's attitude and understood the other party's determination to kill him. He really wanted to kill him in front of his master. Fear once again attacked his mind. This Tianjiao of Fishing Sea restaurant was now in a sorry state with disheveled hair. As he hurriedly dodged, he looked at his master anxiously. Why didn't he stop? However, he saw a decision in that calm gaze. He knew that his master really wouldn't interfere. Perhaps he would avenge him after death. But he was already dead. What was the point of revenge? He roared angrily. At this moment, his eyes were red. He actually turned around and pounced on Jiang Wang. Come on, pooh! The sound of a long sword piercing through a body. Jiang Wang really came. He kicked Ji Shaoqing, who was already in a state of madness, and sent him flying, avoiding his possible counterattack before his death. His body was pulled away from the sword, bringing with it a stream of blood. Ji Shaoqing, Gu Huaixin said, your death is as light as a feather, but the honor of Fishing Sea restaurant is as heavy as a mountain. You must know that. He was very fair. He didn't tamper with his voice, and there was no divine ability to calm Ji Shaoqing's state. But bang! A pitch-black object suddenly appeared in the sky above the Tianya stage. The way it appeared was very strange. It looked like someone had broken space with a punch and pierced through the rules, so it appeared here. It shouldn't have appeared, but it did. It was so discordant, yet so unyielding. It was a brass knuckle. It looked like it was made of black iron. At first glance, it wasn't conspicuous, but after looking at it for a while, one could feel the roaring, murderous aura. It was the terror of thousands of soldiers dying and tens of thousands of horses in silence. Those who knew would know that it was called the Fallen Army. Those who didn't know had no right to look at it. Gu Huaixin firmly shut his mouth. He knew that this was the final warning. Chapter 950. At the same time, an ancient-looking sword appeared in the sky. It seemed to have pierced through time and space, descending from an unknown place and hanging in the sky. It was the opposite of the Fallen Army. This sword was about 1 meter long, and the sword guard was an oval ring with intertwined patterns. 2 Dao characters were engraved on the body of the sword. Chun Du, it was the Chun Du sword of Dianhai Tower Master Wei Sun. Apart from the Tower Master of Dianhai Tower and the Alliance leader of the Sea Suppression Alliance, Wei Sun had an even more popular nickname, Chun Du Perfected Lord. Chun Du versus the Fallen Army. The Tower Master of Dianhai Tower and Achi's military god both turned their attention to this place. This duel on the Tianya stage was of such high standards that it was shocking. Who would dare to play tricks? At this moment, Ji Shaoqing had calmed down. Because of Gu Huaixin's words, your death is as light as a feather, but the honor of Dianhai Tower is as heavy as a mountain. Was the honor of Dianhai Tower important? Of course it was, but if he died, he would be nothing. Therefore, Gu Huaixin was telling him, don't be afraid of death. As your master, I will save you. You have to protect the honor of Dianhai Tower and make your death the most valuable. Then, let me give you the most exciting duel. Ji Shaoqing thought to himself. However, in the next moment, he heard the cold and cruel sound of sword whistling. That sword light, that was like frost and snow, was closing in once again. It was imminent. This person's sword was still so resolute. Even if a perfected person or a perfected lord appeared, he didn't waver at all. Would his hand never tremble? Ji Shaoqing subconsciously released the water-sense spirit and habitually used illusions to escape. When he released the Taoist spell, he realized that something was wrong. His opponent had the ability to see through illusions. In a hurry, he tried to use water spout again, but it was too late. Jiang Wang accurately found his real body and slashed out with his sword. It was as if heaven and earth were being split apart. An arm flew high into the air. Ji Shaoqing held the wound on his severed arm with his right hand that was missing a finger and rolled several times in the air to distance himself from Jiang Wang again. The excruciating pain made him furious. Death was right in front of him, but he didn't have to be afraid of death, because Gu Huaixin had promised to save him. Again, he yelled. Instead, he wanted to show his courage and tenacity. In the face of life and death, he showed the strength of a Tianjiao. The wound was blocked by a layer of water, preventing the blood from flowing out. He stepped in the air and executed a Dao technique with one arm. He actually charged back at Jiang Wang. Senior Brother Ji, a few of the spectating disciples of Fishing Ocean Tower couldn't help but cry. He was moved by Ji Shaoqing's tenacity, but he looked at Jiang Wang with hatred. Gu Huaixin sighed in his heart. Of course, he hoped that Ji Shaoqing would be able to find a way out of this hopeless situation and win against Jiang Wang with the determination to die. Only then would this battle not be in vain. However, the young man named Jiang Wang had a frightening talent in battle. He didn't give in at all, and had already firmly secured the victory. Only now did Ji Shaoqing want to put his life on the line. It was already too late to salvage the situation. Sir War God, Gu Huaixin suddenly turned around and saluted the brass knuckles in the sky. Everyone has to die. If Zhu Biqiong can die, then so can Ji Shaoqing. In a battle of life and death, there is no need to complain. However, now that Jiang Wang has killed him, all the grievances have been resolved. If Ji Shaoqing is reborn, it will naturally have nothing to do with the past. I set up the altar for after the duel, not for the duel itself. Please understand, he had already decided to leave a way out for Ji Shaoqing. He prepared materials and treasures at all costs to bring him back to life after he died in battle. This was reasonable and didn't violate the rules of the duel. However, the Cheese War God's brass knuckles were here. He had to explain, lest Jiang Mengxiong think he broke the rules. The Chengdu sword and the brass knuckles faced each other from a distance, as if they didn't intend to express any opinions. Reasonable, the voice in the brass knuckles said. Jiang Wuyo was furious. Jiang Wang was really dead. Ji Shaoqing was dead, but he still had a chance to come back to life. What kind of bullshit duel was this? However, Gu Huaixin's actions were indeed outside the rules. Moreover, Jiang Mingxiong had already agreed. What reason did she have to disagree? Besides being angry, she couldn't do anything else. Outside the Tianya stage was outside the Tianya stage. The Tianya stage was the Tianya stage. Jiang Wang didn't care about what was happening outside. He only knew that the duel was still going on. Then he would continue to swing his sword. Ji Shaoqing was no match for him in his peak condition. Now that he was seriously injured, it was impossible for him to turn the tables with courage. When it came to courage, when had Jiang Wang ever lost to anyone? The sword surged with cold light, coming and going in an instant. This sword cut through Ji Shaoqing's abdomen and directly cut him to the ground. Jiang Wang stood in the air. At this moment, the Chengdu sword and the brass knuckles faced each other in the sky. Outside the Tianya stage, the present-age enlightened master Gu Huaixin had already built an altar. He was only waiting for Ji Shaoqing to die so that he could immediately save his soul. The Tianjiao disciple of the sea fishing tower fell to the ground like a dead dog. His hair was disheveled, and his face was covered in blood. His left arm was cut off at the shoulder. The finger on his right hand had exploded, and there was a deep sword wound on his chest and abdomen. The sword-wielding youth hovered in the air. His thin lips were slightly pursed, and his eyes were firm and resolute. He didn't look at Ji Shaoqing. Instead, he looked at Gu Huaixin, who was waiting outside the Tianya stage. He looked at this present-age enlightened master. "How do you plan to save him?" he asked. Gu Huaixin didn't say anything. Even if this youth named Jiang Wang had already displayed extremely terrifying talent in this battle on the Tianya stage and had an extremely bright future. But at least for now, he still didn't have the qualifications to talk to the enlightened master. Among the spectators, a practical elder of the sea fishing tower couldn't help but say, "Too arrogant." Dare I ask the enlightened master? Has he been blinded by his victory in this battle? He already doesn't know his own worth. Although he seemed to be privately judging, his voice wasn't concealed. Everyone could hear him clearly. Perhaps Jiang Wang heard him, perhaps he didn't. He asked Gu Huaixin a question, but he didn't wait for an answer. He fell, like a spear falling from the sky. Straight, sharp, and fearless. He plunged to the side of Ji Shaoqing, who had fallen to the ground. Then, Changxiang Longing turned upside down and stabbed down. This sword directly pierced through Ji Shaoqing's 5 prefectures sea and pierced through his heavenly palace. It destroyed all possibility of his resistance. He felt his Tao energy rapidly depleting, and he experienced the feeling of his vitality rapidly disappearing. At this critical juncture between life and death, Ji Shaoqing vaguely touched upon something. In the collapsing inner palace, the 5th inner palace, there was indeed something that he had previously overlooked. Could he only have a chance to see the Earth's Gate in a true life and death situation? He was ecstatic. He used the last of his strength to actually squeeze out a smile at Jiang Wang. You won this battle. My skills are inferior. I die without regrets. Honorable death in battle. When I come to find you in the future, can you still be so honorable? Or could it be that they were unwilling, fearful, and weeping bitterly? He thought. With this thought in mind, he waited for death. But he discovered that the flow of his life had stopped. He looked at Jiang Wang in confusion. Jiang Wang was circulating his true essence, using shoddy healing techniques to carefully heal him. What the hell? He struggled to get up, but was pressed back to the ground by a casual push. Jiang Wang was very careful when he attacked. He only damaged Ji Shaoqing's cultivation, but did not cause any fatal injuries. Of course, his healing techniques were terrible, but stopping the bleeding was not a big problem. Under the onlookers of many cultivators, he slowly treated Ji Shaoqing's wounds as if he was taking care of a close friend. Then, he raised his head and said to the present-age perfected person, "A few days ago, I heard a sentence here. A person is like a lamp, and life is like oil." His attitude was very proper, and his voice was very polite. But under the calm, deep sea, there were endless waves of anger. He said, "I really want to know, when the oil of the lamp slowly burns out, whether or not the lamp can be reignited." Ji Shaoqing's eyes widened in horror, and he immediately wanted to bite his tongue to commit suicide. But Jiang Wang did not hesitate to slap him, breaking all his teeth. Jiang Wang withdrew his hand and very considerately straightened Ji Shaoqing's head, letting him lie more neatly. Then he sat cross-legged next to him. He wanted to endure 9 days and 9 nights on this Heaven's Edge stage. He wanted to endure until Ji Shaoqing died. Then he wanted to see if Gu Huaixin could save him. Chapter 951. Jiang Wang didn't expect Jiang Mengxiong to show up, but he had already considered the possibility of success before he decided to challenge Ji Shaoqing. It was impossible to kill a Tianjiao like Ji Shaoqing by ambushing him. Not to mention that Fishing Ocean Tower was protecting their Tianjiao disciples, and not to mention how many people were watching the Isle of Huai. Even if he killed Ji Shaoqing by ambushing him, Fishing Ocean Tower would definitely retaliate. This wasn't something that could be compared to killing Hai Zoming. It was completely crossing Fishing Ocean Tower's bottom line. Fishing Ocean Tower would definitely kill him with the greatest determination, and Chi's protection might not be that strong. He couldn't possibly withstand it. Therefore, he chose to challenge Ji Shaoqing in a life-and-death battle. The bigger the battle, the better. The establishment of the Ocean Merit List, the first place on the secondary list. He blocked the entrance of Fishing Ocean Tower's base and called for a battle. This undoubtedly pushed this battle to the peak. Almost everyone in the offshore islands knew about it. Under such circumstances, Chi would no longer remain silent. The Sea Suppression Alliance was established, and Fishing Ocean Tower's actions were effective. It could be said that Fishing Ocean Tower was expanding at an astonishing speed under Wei Sun's leadership. She had tolerated it again and again. Now, Tianjia was fighting a life-and-death battle. If they couldn't even guarantee fairness, who would be afraid of Qi? It was tantamount to announcing to the world that Qi could no longer suppress Fishing Ocean Tower. Who would allow that? No matter how important it was to fight against the sea race, Qi couldn't completely give up the fight for supremacy in the sea. Protecting Jiang Wang's Hai Sun and making him the first place on the secondary list was a show of his attitude. Jiang Wang didn't need any other help. The only thing he wanted was fairness. Since the fairness of the battle could be guaranteed, Jiang Wang would undoubtedly come to kill Ji Shaoqing. He couldn't wait any longer. Therefore, he came. Therefore, he spoke with Dao arts, divine powers, and swords. He first defeated Bao Song, then fought with Ji Shaoqing until the current situation. But now, that perfected master, the fourth elder of Fishing Ocean Tower, had made it clear that he wanted to save Ji Shaoqing after the battle. How could he tolerate that? He wanted Ji Shaoqing to die. It was a death where his bones were ground to dust, and there was no way he could come back to life. Instead of just going through the motions and coming back from the dead. That hatred was unquenchable. No matter how many resources Gu Huaixin had spent, no matter how much blood, sweat, and tears he had put in, none of them could make up for his life. Only Ji Shaoqing's life could compare to Zhu Biqiang's. So what if the Jinren of the present age came in person? Since everyone had to abide by the rules of the duel, no one could interfere before the life and death was decided. He would not give Ji Shaoqing a quick death. He wanted to cripple Ji Shaoqing's cultivation and then slowly exhaust his life in a crippled state, burning out the last bit of lamp oil. The pain that Zhu Biqiang had suffered, he wanted Ji Shaoqing to also experience it. Jiang Wang's speech silenced the audience. What shocked everyone was not his courage to go against a spiritual master, but his deep hatred for Ji Shaoqing. Gu Huaixin took a deep look at Jiang Wang, but didn't say anything. Jiang Mengxiong's will hung high in the sky. It was not just for show. As a spiritual master, he couldn't bully the weak and fight with Jiang Wang. Since that was the case, what was the point of a spiritual master arguing with an insignificant inner mansion cultivator? He would only lose his status for no reason. It was better to stay silent. This silence might be disdain or disbelief. A disciple of Fishing Ocean Tower in the crowd said indignantly, "Killing someone is just a matter of nodding your head. It's fine if you win, and it's fine if you kill him. Why are you so vicious? Killing someone is just a matter of nodding your head. This is a good saying. It's reasonable." Jiang Wang suddenly turned around and looked at that person. A few days ago, when Ji Shaoqing blocked the Tianya stage and didn't allow anyone to get close for treatment, causing Zhu Biqiang to die, why didn't you tell him? That person's face turned red. I didn't know at that time. You didn't know? Jiang Wang raised his voice and said angrily, "There are so many people in the Fishing Ocean Tower. Didn't they know?" No one could respond. Or you don't care? Jiang Wang's voice fell, sounding sorrowful. Do you think it doesn't matter what an abandoned disciple does? It's understandable for a Tianjiao to be willful, right? That's how people are. If it doesn't concern them, they won't feel anything. He turned back, looked at Ji Shaoqing, and said to the onlookers, "Look at this person. He can watch others suffer and die in torment, but he himself is carefree and calm." At that time, he even smiled and said hello to me. But he punched down and smashed Ji Shaoqing's knee. His flesh and bones shattered on the spot. Ji Shaoqing's entire body shrank, and his cheeks twitched from the unbearable pain, and he howled. Jiang Wang cast a healing spell on him and said calmly, "He knows pain when it's on his body." "Everyone," he said in a serious tone, "no matter which sect you are from, I hope you remember today. No matter what you're going to do in the future, please think before you make a decision. If someone also did this to you, would you be able to endure it?" He was like an old pedant, like a well-meaning moralist, saying sincerely, "Don't do to others what you don't want others to do to you." If everyone could remember these words, perhaps this world would be a little better. At this moment, it was unknown what he thought of. Although his expression was calm, his eyes clearly flashed with tears. But who cared? Some people felt he was awe-inspiring. Some people felt he was hateful, and some people felt he was reckless. He was very serious in his reasoning, but some people only felt that he was showing off his prowess. Jiang Wang, Jiang Wang. Ji Shaoqing recovered a little from the intense pain. His four limbs had long been restrained, and he couldn't move. He could only curse madly. You deserve to die. You deserve to die. I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. All right, Jiang Wang said indifferently. I hope you have this opportunity. As he spoke, he slashed with his fingers, and a section of his tongue flew high into the air. The cursing came to an abrupt end. But you're too noisy right now, Jiang Wang said. The complexions of many fishing ocean tower cultivators were unsightly. They couldn't bear Jiang Wang's public torture of their sex, Tianjiao. Immediately, a young cultivator stood out. Surnamed Jiang, I'll fight you to the death. Do you dare to accept my challenge? Jiang Wang raised his head and glanced at him, saying indifferently, sure. His gaze slowly turned around. Those who kill will be killed by others. Today, I ascended the Tianya platform with this kind of awareness. As long as they're at the same cultivation level as me, I'll accept any life and death challenge. As soon as Ji Shaoqing dies, we can start. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. He was willing to accept the challenge of all inner palace cultivators from Fishing Ocean Tower. So arrogant. Amidst the shock and uproar, Jiang Wang looked at the young cultivator who spoke indignantly and added, However, I suggest you discuss this with your elders, because you really aren't strong enough. Calm, unhurried, and confident. Chapter 952. Under everyone's gaze, the young cultivator couldn't stand it and walked up the stage. Okay, But his mouth was immediately covered. His master forcefully restrained him and quickly dragged him away from this place. Even Ji Shaoqing, who had mastered the heavenly gate divine ability, was defeated. This young cultivator wasn't even outstanding in the sect. What would he use to fight? His hot-bloodedness? Could he take a few hits? He could be hot-blooded, but his master couldn't watch him die. I may have gone too far today. I admit that I was full of resentment, but I respected Fishing Ocean Tower very much. You should be able to see how much I respect the Fishing Sea Pavilion. I begged everywhere. I didn't even straighten my back on the World Edge stage. I begged for mercy. I only wanted a chance. If they asked me to wash my sins, I did it. If they asked me to kill the commander-level Marine race, I killed the commander-level Marine race. I killed as many as they asked me to. I stayed in the bewildering world for 9 days and got 11,300 ocean merit points. Do you have any idea what that means? This number means that if I want to kill the Marine race soldiers, I have to kill 11,300 of them. I risked my life. But when I came back after risking my life to pick up my suffering friend, Ji Shaoqing said something. He said, Jiang Wang pointed at Ji Shaoqing and said, Brother Jiang, it's my duty. Don't blame me. Duty my ass. He roared, I don't believe that Tower Master Wei, a perfected cultivator, would play with a junior like me. On one hand, he asked me to risk my life in the bewildering world. On the other hand, he asked someone who didn't have to die here. I don't believe that Fishing Ocean Tower is so unreasonable and doesn't care about the peace of the island. They would find a reason to send Qi, a 4th-stage blue medal, to die. Fishing Ocean Tower wouldn't admit to any of the 2 points, he said, especially in front of Jiang Mengxiong. Therefore, Jiang Wang continued, a debt of blood can only be repaid with blood. So I must kill Ji Shaoqing. He stood up and bowed in all directions. Then he said, I hate Ji Shaoqing, but I still respect Fishing Ocean Tower and its history and glory. Therefore, I can understand if there are any people who feel indignant for him or resent him. I'm willing to accept it. I can kill people, and people can also kill me. If I die here today, I won't complain. His words were insightful, insistent, appealing, and even more so, assertive. At the same time, he also gave the Fishing Sea Tower a chance to kill him in public. Fishing Ocean Tower was not a small sect that could be taken lightly. Jiang Wang didn't accept the life and death challenge from all the inner mansion level cultivators in the Sea Fishing Tower out of arrogance. Instead, it gave the fishing sea tower an outlet to vent their anger. I killed Ji Shaoqing today, so you can kill me in the same way. That was fair. As for whether or not he could kill them, that was another matter altogether. He was giving an explanation for his actions of killing Ji Shaoqing. Even if it was just giving Ji Shaoqing a taste of his own medicine and treating him in the same way, he still needed to give him an explanation. This was the weight of the name Fishing Sea Tower behind Ji Shaoqing. In fact, if it weren't for Qi's support, today's duel wouldn't have been fair at all, even if both sides were betting on life and death. There was no such thing as absolute fairness in this world. Jiang Wang had always been very willing to respect the existing rules. At least before he had the ability to change them, he would rather choose to respect the rules than challenge them. But at the same time, he used this method to avoid further intensification of the conflict with the Sea Fishing Tower because he really had a certain degree of confidence. The conflict couldn't be resolved, but at least he couldn't be on the Sea Fishing Tower's must-kill list for now. Among the younger generation cultivators in the Sea Fishing Tower, there were of course people stronger than him. For example, Chun Jitao was now in the Immortal Ascension realm and was much stronger than him. But if it was limited to the inner mansion level, no matter who he faced, he had the power to fight. Even if the opponent had 4 palaces and 4 divine abilities, or even the legendary 5 divine abilities of the Heavenly Palace. The number of divine abilities was one aspect, the effect was another, and the usage was another. In a life and death duel, Jiang Wang dared to draw his sword against anyone. Ji Shaoqing, who had mastered the Heavenly Gate divine ability, was an absolute powerhouse in the inner mansion level, and Jiang Wang defeated him without even using the astral path. Of course, he had the Heaven Ascension Immortal technique, which just happened to avoid the suppression of the Heavenly Gate. But even if he didn't use the Heaven Ascension Immortal technique, Jiang Wang believed that he could use the astral path to create an opportunity to win the battle. It was just not worth it to expose it in front of so many people. Zhuang Chengxian had dominated his entire life, and no one knew that he had the astral path divine ability. It was only because of this that he could dominate undefeated. Disregarding everything else, this deep tolerance and concealment was something that Jiang Wang could learn from. Only when one didn't know the astral path could the most powerful effect be unleashed. What made everyone silent was when Jiang Wang opened his mouth and expressed that he was willing to accept any life and death challenge from any inner mansion level cultivator. The excited young cultivators quieted down instead. It was normal to feel anger, resentment, criticism, disdain, and even scolding in their hearts. Fighting to the death in a fit of anger was also a form of courage. However, when they were given time to think and weigh the pros and cons, and Jiang Wang promised that he wouldn't refuse, any resentful person would have to think, am I a match for Ji Shaoqing? Can I withstand the divine ability of Heaven Gate? If I can't even defeat Ji Shaoqing, what right do I have to fight to the death with Jiang Wang? Many people dared to fight to the death, but who could be calm about courting death? Moreover, it was such a meaningless death. Apart from increasing Jiang Wang's prestige and becoming a commentary for his sword across the ocean tower, it had no value and no use. In such a big ocean tower, it was impossible to not find a few inner mansion level cultivators. For example, Su Yuan was not weaker than Ji Shaoqing, but he was only not weaker. He also had no confidence in facing Jiang Wang. Moreover, what friendship did he have with Ji Shaoqing? In terms of feelings and interests, he only needed to be a bystander. As for Reverend Cheng Wang and Reverend Qin Zhen, their most outstanding disciples were already in the outer tower or even the immortal arrival level. In the inner mansion level, there really wasn't anyone who could say that they were stronger than Ji Shaoqing. The young cultivators of the ocean tower didn't utter a word. The cultivators of the other sects and sects, as well as the rogue cultivators who didn't belong to any sects, naturally could only remain silent. Showing off now was no different from courting death. Regardless of whether it was the ocean tower or the Qi represented by Jiang Wang, they couldn't afford to offend him. Chun Jitao, could no longer remain silent. Jiang Wang almost killed Ji Shaoqing in front of so many people, and then forced thousands of people to stop with his words. The scene was dead silent. This was too damaging to the dignity of the Ocean Tower. But how could he do it? The rules of a life-and-death duel were there, and Q's military god's brass knuckles were high in the sky. With his immortal arrival-level cultivation, it was impossible for him to make a move. Chen Jitao took a deep look at Jiang Wang and said, "Fellow Taoist, Zhang's youthful spirit really makes me recall the past. If I was born 15 years later, I would definitely kill fellow Taoist Jiang here." The cultivators of the Ocean Tower were shaken. Yes, they still had senior brother. No matter how arrogant Jiang Wang was, didn't he only dare to fight intermansion level opponents? In the real Tianjiao, who would stay in the intermansion level? If senior brother Chun was born 15 years later and was also in the intermansion level, he would definitely be able to defeat Jiang Wang. What Chi Tianjiao? Could he be a match for senior brother Chen? Now, it was just a coincidence that the strongest Tianjiao of the younger generation in the Ocean Tower was not in the intermansion level. The strength of the intermansion level cultivators couldn't determine the strength of the sect. It couldn't even determine the foundation of the sect because everyone's fortune was different. The intermansion level divine ability depended on luck. This was the impact that Chun Jitao wanted to convey with his words. Although Ji Shaoqing was defeated and the Ocean Tower didn't have an intermansion level cultivator who could win against Jiang Wang, it didn't mean much. Gu Huaixing glanced at Chun Jitao discreetly and sighed in his heart. Chun Jitao was indeed the strongest person of the younger generation in the sect. His breadth of mind was stronger than Ji Shaoqing's. There were some words that were inconvenient for him to say with his status, but Chun Jitao was different. He did indeed do a good job. In response to Chun Jitao's statement, Jiang Wang didn't continue to be arrogant. Instead, he said respectfully, "If senior brother Chun was born 15 years later, you wouldn't have become famous and this wouldn't have happened. Anyway, he had to kill Ji Shaoqing today. Other than that, nothing else was important. It wasn't a big deal to say a few words of praise." Chun Jitao was indeed so strong that it wasn't shameful to compliment him. Of course, it was necessary to step on Ji Shaoqing while he was at it. Chun Jitao didn't take the opportunity to make a fuss. After all, suppressing the intermansion level divine ability wasn't something to be proud of. When he was in the intermansion level, could he really suppress the current Jiang Wang? That was actually still a problem. Retracting his gaze from Jiang Wang, the eldest senior brother of the Ocean Tower, who was floating in the air, let out a long sigh. Then he said to the cultivators who had surrounded the Tianya stage so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through, "Everyone, disperse. Ji Shaoqing is a cultivator of the Ocean Tower. He will admit what he has done. He agreed to the life-and-death duel, and he will persist until the last moment. I don't want to talk about right or wrong. This duel will decide the final chapter. But senior brothers," he raised his voice, "I don't want to see anyone come to challenge us again, and none of us can accept it. If someone else stands there and none of us can win, we are the Ocean Tower. How can we do this?" At this moment, tears flowed down from his eyes. He bent down and bowed deeply to the young cultivators of the Ocean Tower, saying earnestly, "Senior brothers, please do your best." Some of the young cultivators present almost shed tears. How disappointing were they to make senior apprentice brother Chun bow to them. For a moment, the cultivators of the Ocean Tower present all bowed in return. Then, one by one, they left the Tianya stage with tears in their eyes without looking back. At this moment, they were full of fighting spirit and shame. Many of them engraved a name in their hearts and secretly swore, from now on, they would work hard and work hard. One day, they would go to the Qi sect and regain the face they had lost to the sect today. Jiang Wang's several bows made the young cultivators of the Ocean Tower fall silent and lose their morale. Chun Jitao's bow reignited their morale. This was indeed an era of Tianjiao. Chapter 953. Jiang Wang didn't care how Chen Jitao controlled the situation. Seeing that Chen Jitao had no intention of saying anything to him, he sat back down next to Ji Shaoqing. This time, he openly sat cross-legged and began to recuperate. It seemed that he really wanted to outlast Ji Shaoqing and was prepared to fight any cultivator of the same level. The young cultivators of Fishing Sea Tower all dispersed. They felt ashamed and went to fight back. Those who remained nearby were the cultivators of various sects and Jueming Island and Mog Valley. Although the Sea Suppression Alliance had been established and included almost all the sects in the offshore islands, the original division of forces hadn't changed much. Jueming Island and Mog Valley were still powerful. Most of the sects that Fishing Sea Tower absorbed were originally neutral sections. The cultivators of Fishing Sea Tower didn't want to watch their Tianjiao slowly die, but the cultivators of Jueming Island and Mog Valley wanted to watch carefully. This was especially so for the cultivators of Juming Island. They felt honored. Seeing the uproar suppressed by Jiang Wang's words, the cultivators in the pits and valleys were all speechless. The young cultivators of Fishing Sea Tower, who had become arrogant because of the establishment of the Sea Suppression Alliance, were suppressed by Jiang Wang alone. They had to rely on Chen Jitao to squeeze out tears to save them. Jiang Weiyou, who was holding the square Heaven Divine Ghost Halberd, only wanted to laugh. What was Tianjiao? What was the Qi Tianjiao? Being a great Qi prodigy meant that if one was a great Qi prodigy in the state of Qi, then they would be a top-notch great Qi prodigy anywhere in the world. Then she looked at Jiang Wang, who had already entered a state of cultivation. She was even more satisfied. Jiang Wang's huge investment had been constantly troubled along the way. She always felt that she would lose everything at any time. Many people around her didn't understand and didn't support her. Even Mr. Mo, although he supported her, used the excuse that I've already invested so much, so it doesn't make a difference. There was a spy in the Fishing Sea House who was at the level of the commissioner of Shu. He had asked Qi Shao to speak for him. He had even taken a great risk to give him advice. Not to mention that he had personally supported him many times. At that time, no one felt that Jiang Wang was worth such a heavy bet. But now, others might not know. But she knew that Jiang Wang must have obtained the 3 supernatural powers. This was because the Buzhou wind was not a divine ability that needed to be hidden. This kind of direct, killing divine ability could not be hidden either. Jiang Wang had told her before that he already had 2 Abhijna seeds when he established the 2 Abhijna mansions. Therefore, other than the true Samadhi fire and the Buzhou wind, he should have another divine ability that he had yet to use. In other words, even though he had displayed his invincible might and defeated Ji Shaoqing, who had the Heaven's Gate divine ability, he had not used his full strength. He opened 3 palaces and plucked 3 divine ability seeds. None of the inner palace realm cultivators in the Fishing Sea Tower dared to fight. At this level, this person was still hiding his strength. If she did not place a heavy bet on this kind of Jiang Wang, who else could she place her chips on? She casually put away the square Heaven Divine Ghost Halberd and looked at Gu Huaixin. Spiritual Master Gu, do you want to continue to accompany me and witness this battle? It was hard for her to say that she was not angry at Gu Huaixin for stopping her. Ji Shaoqing had already made it clear that he wanted to escape. Didn't you see that Chen Jitao, who was also a witness, did not intervene to help? However, this Gu Huaixin was eager to protect his disciple. As a spiritual master, he stopped Ji Shaoqing and reminded him not to escape. Therefore, her words were naturally filled with resentment. Aren't you supposed to be upholding justice and maintaining order in the battle? Then come with me and watch how your personal disciple dies with your own eyes. The difference between the inner palace and the true cave was naturally like heaven and earth. However, the Qi's Huaying Palace Master was qualified to talk to a spiritual master. Logically speaking, as the witness of this battle, she was qualified to talk to anyone who tried to interfere with this battle. Most importantly, the Qi's military god, Jiang Mengxiong's brass knuckles were currently in Gaoqiong. Who could do anything to her? If she used words to stab him, so be it. Gu Huaixin glanced at Jiang Wuyo and finally decided not to remain silent. After all, Jiang Wuyo and Jiang Wang had different statuses. The disrespect towards Jiang Wuyo could be directly blamed on the Qi royal family. Didn't you see that during the ocean worship ceremony, even the first elder of the fishing sea tower, spiritual master Cheng Wang, wanted to give Jiang Wuyo a seat? This is a matter between you young people. The ones in charge of notarizing the battle are you and Ji Tao. As the witnesses, you can do whatever you want. The battle of life and death on the stage will be decided based on their own abilities. It's nothing more than a more skilled one will live and the less skilled one will die. There's nothing much to say. He said slowly, I'm just an old man with half a foot in the coffin. I'm just a bystander to this farce. Most spiritual masters of the current era had a lifespan of 1,296 years. After the restart of the current era's calendar, only 3,919 years had passed. One could see how long their lifespan was. When Gu Huaixin said that he had half a foot in the coffin, of course, he was just saying it. However, he couldn't help but feel some resentment and coldness. After all, it was impossible for him to remain indifferent towards Ji Shaoqing's plight. Jiang Wuyo nodded. Spiritual Master Gu is deeply righteous. That's great. She didn't care what Gu Huaixin thought. She only needed to hear what he said. A dignified spiritual master of the current era wouldn't swallow his own words in front of so many people. She also wanted to prevent any possibility of Gu Huaixin interfering with the battle under Jiang Mengsheng's watch. As for Cheng Gengsheng, who was watching the Tianya stage from the sidelines, his state was different. Today was Jiang Wang's home ground. He remained silent from beginning to end. He actually wanted to tell Qin Jitao that he was born 15 years too early, but he didn't see him do anything to Tian Anping. However, there was no need to continue provoking Qin Jitao. Secondly, mentioning Tian Anping in front of Jiang Wuyo was a bit unwise. Thirdly, Qin Jitao really didn't have anything too hateful. Even speaking up now was only for the sake of the sect. There was no need to form a grudge. It was fine to let him have the upper hand verbally. It was fine as long as Jiang Wang didn't suffer any substantial losses. As for Gu Huaixin, he had a lot to say to attack him. However, the other party was a spiritual master after all. He could only squint his eyes. Those who didn't know him would think that he had fallen asleep standing up. Time was meticulous. From the 17th day of the 4th month of the 3,919th year of the Tao calendar to the 22nd day of the 4th month of the 3,919th year of the Tao calendar. A full 5 days. Jiang Wang sat on the Tianya stage for a full 5 days. Ji Shaoqing struggled painfully on the Tianya stage for 5 days, including Jiang Wuyo, Cheng Gengsheng. Even Gu Huaixin, Qin Jitao, and other spectators, they all waited outside the Tianya stage for 5 days. This also included Gujian Qindou and the knuckle dusters who were confronting Gao Qiong. In these 5 days, except for the Tianya stage, the rest of the Huai Islands seemed to have returned to normal. People continued with their lives. But no matter who it was, they couldn't help but glance at the Tianya stage from time to time. Everyone was waiting for the final result, whether they showed it or not. For everyone, it was a long 5 days. Previously, Jiang Wang had said that he would wait until Ji Shaoqing's oil ran out and burn him to death. He was prepared to stay on the Tianya stage for 9 days and 9 nights. But Ji Shaoqing didn't seem to be able to hold on until the 9th day. On the 5th day, his life was coming to an end. He was beaten down from Tianjiao to the ground. He was trampled under the feet of his opponent in a place that should have been the center of attention and endless glory. All his postures before his death were watched by people. Everyone could imagine Ji Shaoqing's pain. Wailing, struggling, crying later. Silence, solitude, waiting for death. He was almost a corpse. On the 5th day, there was no movement at all, so people knew that it was the last moment. Chapter 954. The altar that Gu Huaixin had set up had been hovering outside the Tianya stage for 5 days. Although Jiang Wang said that he would wait until Ji Shaoqing died, until there was no possibility of him coming back to life. But Gu Huaixin naturally wouldn't give up. It was only a matter of course for an inner house cultivator. In his opinion, Jiang Wang didn't understand what death was at all. He couldn't understand the meaning of life and death, and he had no way of knowing the process of reincarnation. The so-called reincarnation wasn't like those beautiful legends. How could an inner house cultivator know what kind of method to save the dead and revive the soul? It was nothing more than paying more resources and a higher price. In terms of emotions, Ji Shaoqing was his direct disciple, personally nurtured by him, and their relationship was deep. From a practical point of view, the divine ability of the gate of heaven was something that could only be chanced upon and not sought. Ji Shaoqing, who had the divine ability of the gate of heaven, naturally had irreplaceable value. Therefore, as a dignified, perfected master, he also accompanied these juniors here and waited for a full 5 days. Of course, this was nothing. The representatives of the will of the two perfected lords were also hanging high in the sky. It was finally going to end. Even a perfected master like Gu Huaixin, who had experienced the vicissitudes of life, couldn't help but sigh. No matter who it was, it would be hard for them to remain calm as they watched their personal disciple slowly die in pain. In fact, if it wasn't for Jiang Mengxiong's brass knuckle hanging high here for 5 days, it was hard to say if he would really be able to hold back and not break the so-called rules. But he could not watch, because to him, the opportunity to save the dead and revive the soul was fleeting. If he didn't keep an eye on it, it was very likely that he would miss the opportunity. In this sense, Jiang Wang was also torturing him. Mentally, he was torturing a perfected master. If this could be considered an achievement, then Jiang Wang was already unparalleled in the world. Now, Jiang Wang had finished recuperating. For the past 5 days, he had been sitting alone on the Tianya stage. Under the gazes of tens of thousands of people, he had been combing himself as if no one else was around. This was a rare cultivation experience, both in the heart and in the Tao. It was all about searching, and his rock-like will and unique sharpness were also watched by everyone. He glanced at Gu Huaixin, who had also been standing guard outside the Tianya stage for 5 days. Putting everything else aside, this was indeed a dedicated and responsible master. However, both sides had irreconcilable standpoints. Thus, he opened his mouth and said, "I was fortunate enough to have seen the resurrection of the dead. I roughly know how to bring back a person who has just died." Cheng Gengxing knew what he was talking about. He patted 14's forearm. Unfortunately, he only encountered cast iron. But 14 grabbed his fat hand with a backhand. Jiang Wuyo was thinking, "I wonder what that person in the High Sky Pavilion is feeling right now." Gu Huaixin looked at the young man on the Tianya stage and frowned. Jiang Wang continued, "There are some techniques and abilities that I'm not qualified to understand. But come to think of it, as long as one's life is exhausted, his soul is extinguished, his life is no life, and his soul is no soul, he will truly never be reincarnated." "What do you mean?" Gu Huaixin finally asked. "I have a set of artifacts that have been shelved for a long time, but I had once sung for Ji Shaoqing. I went through several life and death situations in the bewildering world, and the killing intent that I used my life to slash out was all triggered by Ji Shaoqing. I sat here for 5 days, and this set of artifacts cried out for 5 days. At first, I thought that the sound was in my ears. Later, I realized that it had always been in my heart. It turned out that it wasn't calling for me. It was my killing intent that was calling for it." Jiang Wang shook his head gently and said in a sighing tone, "I didn't want to use it before, but now I've decided to use it." Yin Fu exchanged glances with Li Longchuan with a solemn expression. They, who were present at that time, recalled that chilling whisper. It was another side of Jiang Wang that they had never seen before. What was that? As he spoke, Jiang Wang had already taken out a set of long nails. His movements were natural and casual, as if he had pulled out a sword countless times. Now, these long nails were spread out in the palm of his left hand. There were 6 nails in a set, each 3 inches long. They were dark and gloomy. When one's gaze fell on them, one would feel as if they were withering away. Lian Ke had once said that this item was against the harmony of heaven, because it was indeed too cruel. Even Dong A's eternal vitality couldn't withstand it. Once it was nailed, it would extinguish all life, leaving no room for mercy. After Jiang Wang killed Dong A, he hadn't touched it for a long time. But now, he had to completely kill Ji Shaoqing and make it impossible for him to come back to life. This was the last resort, and also the last guarantee. If Gu Huaixin could even save Ji Shaoqing in this state, then he could only accept it. The killing nail had been restless in the storage box for a long time, but he hadn't taken it out. First, he was wary of that mysterious and terrifying Yen Xiao. Second, after all, he had just plucked Buzhou Feng's divine ability seed and didn't have enough control over pure killing intent. He was worried that the killing nail and Buzhou Feng would react and cause him to be disturbed by the killing intent. He was right to be worried. When the 6 dark, gloomy long nails spread out in the palm of his hand, the frosty white divine ability seed in the 3rd inner mansion suddenly emitted endless light, illuminating the entire 3rd inner mansion in a frosty white. Whoosh, without Jiang Wang's control, a wisp of frosty white wind blew out of his nostrils and landed on his left palm, coiling around the killing nail. Kill! With Jiang Wang's left palm as the center, the fierce killing intent spread in all directions. Of course, with so many experts present, it couldn't even get past Chen Jitao, so it couldn't rush out of the Tinya stage. But even Chen Jitao, who was at the divine descent realm, had a hint of surprise in his eyes. He actually felt a little threatened by this killing intent. This was simply unbelievable. In the secret place, Su Xiangwan, who had been observing the situation from afar, shook her head at her son. Ji Shaoqing's loss wasn't unjust. If Jiang Wang had used this item earlier and combined it with his Buzhou Feng divine ability, this battle would have been over long ago. Su Yuan muttered, "Do I still have a chance of defeating him now?" Su Xiangwan sighed and only said, "There will be plenty of time in the future." On the Tianya stage, the wisp of Buzhou Feng on Jiang Wang's palm seemed to be pulled into a frosty thread, entangling the 6 killing nails together. Kill! 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 The killing intent couldn't rush out of the Tianya stage, but it kept colliding inside and outside of Jiang Wang's body. Fortunately, he had sat on the Tianya stage for a full 5 days. These were 5 days of tempering his mind under the gaze of tens of thousands of people. It was also 5 days of familiarizing himself with his new divine ability and completely subduing the Buzhou Feng. Jiang Wang retracted his thoughts, and the divine ability seed in the 3rd inner residence instantly withdrew its frosty light, and the wisp of Buzhou Feng on his left palm had already disappeared. Those 6 killing nails, however, had been reborn. They were still dark and gloomy, as if they wanted to kill all gazes. But at the tip of the nails, a touch of frost condensed. Increasingly cold, Jiang Wang casually tossed them out, and the 6 killing nails turned into a wisp of frosty white wind, spinning above his palm. With another move, they turned into nails and fell down. The Buzhou Feng was the wind of killing. The killing nail was also the treasure of killing. They were naturally harmonious, naturally coexisting. At this moment, the Buzhou Feng was also the killing nail, and the killing nail was also the Buzhou Feng. The two were indistinguishable from each other and coexisted in harmony. As he wished, it instantly became the strongest killing divine ability that Jiang Wang currently grasped. It had already surpassed the Samadhi true fire that he had developed for a long time. Seeing this scene, Gu Huaixin was shocked. Chapter 955. Buzhou Feng had advanced. Just the killing intent it emitted caused Ji Shaoqing, who had been silent for a long time, to open his eyes again. Only his eyes were cold and gloomy. Clearly, they had been corroded by the killing intent. And that body, which had no strength left, actually trembled and fell into some kind of final struggle. Wait, Gu Huaixin couldn't help but say. Jiang Wang looked at him, waiting to see what he wanted to say. Jiang Wang. As a perfected master, it wasn't easy to speak soft words to a junior. But the one lying on the Tianya stage at this moment was his most important disciple. He realized that if he was nailed by this extremely cold nail, his life force wouldn't just be in his body. Ji Shaoqing, who had no power to resist, would definitely die in body and soul. All the resurrection methods he had prepared would be completely useless. He had been waiting for Ji Shaoqing to die, but he wasn't prepared to welcome Ji Shaoqing's true death. This powerful, perfected master opened his mouth with difficulty. I'll let Ji Shaoqing go. I'll let him kowtow and apologize to you. I'll let him guard Zhu Biqiang's coffin. You can compensate him however you want. And you can obtain the gratitude of a perfected master. In the end, he used the word thanks. To use thanks to an inner mansion cultivator. He really valued Ji Shaoqing and treated this disciple very well. He didn't treat him much worse than his own son. He didn't even hesitate to put down the airs of a perfected master for him. How great was the value of a perfected master's gratitude? But Jiang Wang shook his head. I respect you very much. Really, you are the jade pillar of the human race, the golden beam of the sea. I'm willing to respect you at any time, but some things can't be undone. Presumably, the current you should be able to understand me. You should understand my feelings of losing a friend. I also want to have a chance to apologize to you. I want to have a chance to apologize to Ji Shaoqing. I don't know how I offended him to make him hate me so much and treat my friend like that. But I don't have a chance, right? Jiang Wang looked at Gu Huaixin. His tone was respectful and his attitude sincere. But he slapped down with a backhand. He rejected the gratitude of a perfected master. A wisp of frosty wind blew, turning into a black nail with a frosty white tip. It was nailed right between Ji Shaoqing's eyebrows. Ji Shaoqing, who was still struggling in his killing intent, immediately stopped. Even the natural twitching of his muscles did not appear again. The long nail turned into a frosty wind and flew back to Jiang Wang's nose. It was gently sucked back into the 5 prefectures sea. Following the departure of this gust of wind, Ji Shaoqing's corpse on the ground collapsed in a manner visible to the naked eye. It really collapsed. It was as if a clay sculpture had shattered, as if a wood sculpture had turned to ash. A person who was as tall as a jade tree collapsed on the spot, leaving only a pile of fine powder. Blown by the sea breeze, they fluttered and scattered to the horizon. The true samadhi fire could also burn a person to ashes. If it was only the physical body that was burned to ashes, Gu Huaixin could still save the soul and think of a way to take over the body, or let Ji Shaoqing switch to the path of godhood. But when the Buzhou wind blew past, not even his soul could be seen. His body and soul had been destroyed, leaving behind only countless worries in the human world. The Buzhou wind that blew away Ji Shaoqing's soul flew back into the 5 prefecture sea. It was no longer as cold and harsh as it was outside. It actually had a lively feeling. The white and fat cloud child lay on the roof of the cloud pavilion. He used a cloud to cover himself, leaving only a small hole, curiously looking at this frosty wind. Because of the rules of the fishing ocean tower, he went to the bewildering world to wash away his sins. The killing intent that nurtured the Buzhou wind was condensed in the frenzied slaughter in the bewildering world. It had already calmed down, but under Ji Shaoqing's instigation, it suddenly boiled. The roaring, killing intent took shape on the way to Tianfu City. Thus, there was the Buzhou wind that had the greatest killing power of the 8 winds. It could be said that this divine ability that was suspended in the 3rd inner palace was closely related to Ji Shaoqing. It originated from the killing intent towards him. Then, killing him was naturally a kind of completion. The Buzhou wind speed of improvement was far faster than the true samadhi fire. In other words, this slaughter god art was the best way to improve through slaughter. The 3 prefectures returned to their positions. The light of the divine ability shone on the 5 prefectures sea. Jiang Wang stood up, neither happy nor sad. He said to everyone, "This battle is over." The vicinity of the Tianya stage was still silent. Only the sea breeze whistled without anyone noticing, and the ashes that Ji Shaoqing had turned into had already dissipated. In this world, not a trace of him could be seen. Jiang Wang glanced at the spell altar suspended in the air and bowed deeply to Gu Huaixin, who was standing beside the spell altar. "I am very sorry to have troubled you to prepare. These materials must have been hard to come by. Please accept them." He knew that after this matter, there was a deep grudge between him and Gu Huaixin. But his battle of life and death with Ji Shaoqing was within the rules. No one could use this as a means of revenge. Before he also ascended to true insight, Qi would not allow Gu Huaixin to bully the weak and do anything to him. Gu Huaixin's long black and white hair was combed neatly. This gave him a different kind of charm. "No need," he said. He did not move. This spell altar in front of him, which was piled up with an unknown amount of resources and whose value was immeasurable, crumbled on the spot, turning into dust and drifting down. The entire place was silent. This was the anger of a present-age perfected person. Even Huaying Palace Master Jiang Wuyo was speechless at this moment. But the Qi people present were not just juniors like Jiang Wuyo and Cheng Gongsheng. From the Annihilation Army brass finger hanging high in the sky, a voice spread out. The reason why this voice was described as spread out was because this voice was as vast and boundless as the sky. It was enveloping the listener's ears, and not just by their ears. "If you are angry, don't vent your anger on a child," the voice said. The tone was not fierce, and could even be said to be very casual. "Your disciple is not sensible, and you are not sensible either." Some people, some existences, even if just a casual frown, could not be ignored. Not to mention this kind of words that were similar to a reprimand. Gu Huaixin did not speak anymore. He flicked his sleeves, turned around, and left. Even in front of a perfected cultivator who stood at the peak of the transcendent realm, an old man who had just lost his beloved disciple had the right to leave in anger. Until Gu Huaixin's figure disappeared. Jiang Wuyo seemed to have just reacted and said loudly, "On the 22nd day of the 4th month of the 3919th year of the Tao calendar, there will be a battle of life and death on the Tianya stage. Great Qi's Jiang Wang versus Fishing House's Ji Shaoqing. The winner is Jiang Wang." In ancient customs, this was something that the notary of the duel should announce. When the notary of the duel announced the result, it meant that the duel was completely over, and the so-called differences in Tao paths and grudges of life and death would not continue. Of course, this was just a beautiful wish. How could Gu Huaixin not hate Jiang Wang? Even if he said that he did not hate him, Jiang Wang would not dare to believe it. In the future, he would have to come to the offshore islands as little as possible. Jiang Wang looked into the distance. It was the direction of the bewildering world. Before he went out to sea, he did not expect so many things to happen overseas. He thought that the biggest difficulty was the sea sacrificial ceremony. He did not expect that it was just the beginning. Regardless of whether it was joy or sorrow, it had finally come to an end. He retracted his gaze and glanced at Cheng Gongsheng, 14, Li Longchuan, Yin Fu, Su Xiangqian, Jiang Wuyo, one by one. Ever since he returned from the bewildering world, he had not seen his friends so well. They were such lively and affectionate friends. "Let's go drink," he said. "Let's go back to Neverwinter Island to drink. Everyone, let's go." Zhong Xiansheng waved his hand and said heroically, "Yin Fu is treating." Chapter 956. Jiang Wang had just been through such a thing at the World's Edge stage, so he naturally couldn't drink on the Isle of Wight. Perhaps someone had poisoned him. The fishing sea tower wouldn't take revenge on Jiang Wang openly, but there were bound to be many people who were dissatisfied with him in private. It was hard to say who would be impulsive. As for why they went to the Zhenggenjia's territory to drink on Neverwinter Island, but let Yin Fu treat them, it could only be said that Chongxian Fat and Su Gao Gao were birds of feather in some ways. Jiang Wang flew out of the World's Edge stage and left with his friends. Although there were probably not many people on the Isle of Wight who would be nice to them, they had confidence. However, these people had their own confidence, and no one cared about these things. Besides, cheap people weren't very popular on the Isle of Wight to begin with. The group swaggered through the streets. Only Su Xianxian stayed at the back of the group. He winked at Zhao Wuyan from afar and said telepathically, "Senior Sister Zhao, there's nothing good to see on the Isle of Wight. How about we go to Neverwinter Island to see the scenery? We'll wait for you on the island." Zhao Wuyan had never concealed her eagerness, and almost everyone knew about it. But he could completely understand that Zhao Wuyan, as the representative of the Longmen Academy disciples, had her own concerns. She didn't want to stand on Jiang Wang's side in public and oppose the fishing sea tower. This was no problem. Zhao Wuyan and Jiang Wang didn't have any friendship in the first place. Although many people thought that Su Gao was frivolous, and even he himself didn't think that others were wrong to scold him, he was really moved by Zhao Wuyan and was willing to respect any thoughts of Zhao Wuyan, except for alienating him. Everyone was very excited after their good friend's battle to the death. Fear, concern, admiration, joy. In short, it was very complicated. They all moved closer to Jiang Wang and patted Jiang Wang here and there. It was as if they were afraid that something was missing from Jiang Wang. He was the only one who didn't care. When Jiang Wang was fighting to the death on the World's Edge stage, he was also focused below the stage. He couldn't wait to make a beautiful embroidery and cheer for Jiang Wang. But after Jiang Wang's battle, he immediately put it to the back of his mind. Zhao Wuyan was the only one in his heart. When he heard that they were going to drink, the first thing that came to his mind was that senior sister Zhao had to go too. If the main character of the banquet, Jiang Wang, could not refuse to attend, then senior sister Zhao must attend. Of course, he wasn't the only one thing. After all, senior sister Zhao had only agreed to give him a chance. She had not agreed to be with him yet. The road ahead is long and arduous. Up, down, left, and right, I have to search everywhere. Thus, a voice transmission sounded in Jishu's ears. Sister Zhao Wuyan, the younger brother of the twin prides of the Rushing Horse Mountain, has become famous after today's battle. I'm afraid my peerless sword won't be able to hide its sharpness anymore. Su Xianxian bragged about himself, and then said, "We'll be hosting a banquet on Neverwinter Island. Please come and join us. My brother Zhang's mood has been very unstable recently. I'm afraid he can't control himself when he drinks. That fatty Changgung Sheng is a womanizer. I don't know how many girls will be around him. I don't even know if someone will take the opportunity to win my brother Zhang's heart. Sigh, I'm very worried about this." Finally, he changed the topic. "Let's not talk about this. I want to invite you and your senior sister Zhao to the banquet on Neverwinter Island. We can drink and get drunk. Can you do me the honor?" Changgung Sheng was the one who provided the territory. Yin Fu was the one who spent the money, and Jiang Wang was the main character. But Su Xianxian used the word "we" to make himself the host. He made it sound like he was taking a dog's life when he captured her heart. But no matter what, the effect was obvious. Zhao Wuyan's eyes lit up. She turned to look at Zhao Wuyan. Zhao Wuyan looked at her and knew that Su Xianxian must have said something to her. He was using Jiang Wang as bait again. She was angry and amused at the same time. She rubbed Zhao Wuyan's head. "You'll be sold by someone sooner or later. We'll be late. We'll go separately." Zhao Wuyan ignored the first half of the sentence and nodded. Senior sister is so nice. As long as they went, it didn't matter if they were late or early. On the other side, when Su Xianxian saw Jishu's eyes light up, he knew that the matter was settled. He turned around and followed behind Li Longchuan. The sea breeze blew across the Tianya stage. No one could calm down. The winner called his friends and went to drink. The loser died, and his soul was destroyed. High up in the sky, the two voices were still talking. Then it's decided. What do you think? Yes, these were two transcendent realm experts. In these 5 days, they had carried out countless detailed communications and negotiations. But they talked about completely unrelated things. Just a few words from them were enough to change the general situation of the entire coastal islands and even the entire eastern domain. One was the death of Ji Shaoqing. The other was the growth of Jiangwan. It was just like the sea breeze on the Tianya stage. The past was the past. Huaixin, the current situation is still to deal with the sea race. We can fight with Juming Island, but we can't break through. I know you're on, but Shaoqing agreed to the life and death challenge. I can't go back on my words. Moreover, this duel is fair. Everyone is here to witness it. Life and death are common. There's no reason that other people's Tianjiao can die, but our Tianjiao can't. In a hall deep in the sect's encampment, Reverend Chong Guang said. He stood in the grand hall with a gentle attitude. Gu Huaixin sat in his seat without moving. He said expressionlessly, Shaoqing's skills are inferior. If he dies, then he dies. There's nothing wrong with that. His resentment couldn't be dispelled. He didn't even get up to greet the first elder, Reverend Chong Guang. However, after losing his beloved disciple, no one complained about his lack of respect. Reverend Chong Guang sighed. Strategy, courage, diligence, and talent are all important. But to determine how far a person can go, it depends on the situation. When Jiang Wang first came to the island, I thought he didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. However, from the bewildering world to the Tianya stage, he didn't shrink back in the face of difficulties. He wasn't discouraged in the face of setbacks. He didn't complain in the face of injustice. He never gave up and never backed down. I haven't seen all the famous Tianjiao of Qi, but those I've seen can't compare to him. Our Shaoqing, I don't know how to teach him. Gu Huaixin interrupted his long-winded speech. He looked up at him and said, Great elder, you didn't come here just to remind me of this, right? That's not what I meant. Reverend Chong Guang wasn't angry at his attitude. He said, You can't keep him tied down all the time. A master can lead you through the door, but it's up to you. You can lead him to a higher level, but in the end, he still has to rely on himself. It's his choice to get to where he is today. You've already done what you can do, and the sect has also done what the sect can do. I've been waiting for a while, but I just want to advise you not to hold grudges over this. It couldn't be said that the sect didn't do anything during the confrontation with the ancient sword of Chengdu. Otherwise, Jiang Mengxiong could have used his interference as an excuse to teach him a lesson. Of course, Gu Huaixin knew this. However, he had to show his resentment, and it had to be shown that it was difficult to dispel. Although this method couldn't be used openly, it had to be done at this time. With Ji Shaoqing's death, there was no one in the younger generation who could hold up the cauldron. He had already failed to become the third elder. After this incident, it could be said that the blow was huge. He had to make the sect worry about his feelings and make up for his loss. Only then could he plan for the future. What's there to hold grudges over? Gu Huaixin said slowly, Shaoqing was my direct disciple, the one I trusted the most. I watched him grow up, and now I'm watching him die. This is very good, very satisfactory. The chapter on the clay sculpture should have been posted last night. When I wrote it myself, I also finished it in one go, and it was more carefree. So, to take into consideration my reading mood, I should have added an update last night, and I was prepared to do so. However, when faced with the choice of a new plot, I began to feel conflicted. Simply put, I went into a daze. As a result, I only have 5 chapters left. I have to keep at least 4 chapters, leaving room for improvement. Because often, as I write, I find a better way to write and a more interesting story unfold. At this time, I will not hesitate to overturn my previous ideas. Without at least 4 chapters, there will be no room for improvement, and I can only continue with the momentum. I can't bear it. At the same time, I have to save 2 more chapters so that if something unexpected happens, I won't have to stop updating. So, 6 chapters is my safety line. Yesterday, I already broke through the safety line, so I didn't update in the end. Count it as me owing everyone a chapter. After that, I'll find some time to make up for it. That's it. There's nothing else to say. Good night, everyone. Chapter 9:57. When they came to Neverwinter Island, Chongxian Xian's enthusiasm was close to flattery. Even the busy Chongxian Ming, he personally came out to receive Jiang Wang. Although he only said a few words and left, it was obvious that he valued them. Jiang Wuyo and Jiang Wang played a part in this. Jiang Wang had killed Ji Shaoqing of Tianjiao on the Tianya stage. Tens of thousands of people had watched the battle, and it was impossible to block the news. First in the ocean merit test was his battle record in the bewildering world. He defeated Ji Shaoqing, who had the divine gate technique in the coastal islands. He was strong in both external and internal battles. Some people even thought that he was already the number one in the coastal islands. Fishing Ocean Tower did not try to block the news. They only emphasized that the battle was fair and that the reason for the duel was because of their differences in Dao and nothing else. In addition, the conversation between Chen Jitao and Jiang Wang was also widely known. Jiang Wang was strong and could be considered to be at the same level as Fishing Ocean Tower, but it was just a coincidence. Heroes did not come to fame. Compared to Chen Jitao, there was still a big gap. In addition, Fishing Ocean Tower's eldest disciple, Chen Jitao's temperament, was even more admirable. Of course, the ancient sword and brass knuckles hanging high in the sky had been hidden. Even Gu Huaixin rarely appeared in the rumors. The entire duel only happened between Jiang Wang and Ji Shaoqing. Without a doubt, this publicity strategy reduced the negative impact of this battle on Fishing Ocean Tower to the greatest extent. It was much better than forcibly suppressing the news. However, Cheng Gengsheng and Jiang Wuyo had a dispute about who did it. Jiang Wuyo thought it was Chen Jitao, while Cheng Gengsheng thought it was Gu Huaixin style. After the conflict with Ji Shaoqing, he studied Gu Huaixin and thought he had some understanding of him. As for why this fatty studied Gu Huaixin, everyone knew. Naturally, this debate ended without a conclusion. It was not important. As soon as they arrived at Neverwinter Island, they all went to drink in high spirits. Su Xiangqian was the only one who did not fit in with the group. He waited alone at the ferry and waited for several hours until Wu Yin and Ji Shu arrived. Only then did he smile from ear to ear and join the feast. On the first day on Neverwinter Island, the group of friends drank the whole night. They restrained their Dao energy and relaxed their minds, hoping to get drunk. Jiang Wang struggled on the Tianya stage, went on an adventure in the bewildering world, and came back to take revenge for Zhu Biqiang. As friends, they were always on tenterhooks. They all needed to be released, except for Su Xiangqian. He had mysteriously stopped drinking, and no one could persuade him otherwise. However, looking at his fawning appearance in front of Zhao Wuyin, it was obvious that he had released enough. There was really no need to adjust his mood. As for Jiang Wang himself, no matter how much power he displayed on the Tianya stage, in the end, Zhu Biqiang left. Toasts were exchanged, and it was hard to tell others what was on his mind. After the jade nectar dispersed, everyone left the stage. In the end, Jiang Wang was still worried about something and did not get drunk. Instead, he pulled Cheng Gengsheng with the smell of alcohol. He wanted to have a good chat with Cheng Gengsheng after leaving the bewildering world, but he had been delayed until now. 14 had always been inseparable. He stood not far from Cheng Gengsheng like a statue. At this time, there was no one else. Jiang Wang considered his words and said directly, "I want to talk to you about your father." Since Jiang Wang won the battle on the Tianya stage, the smile on Cheng Gengsheng's face disappeared. Oh, he moved his body, as if he was not sitting very comfortably. Then he raised his eyes and asked, "The place where he died was in the bewildering world?" He was indeed Cheng Gengsheng. Jiang Wang only needed to start a conversation, and he could guess most of the things. The bewildering world is a very dangerous place. The laws there are different from the modern world. If you stay in the wild for a long time, you'll have the risk of mutation. Countless experts of the sea race and human race fight there. They kill each other's experts and fight for bewildering crystals. They use the bewildering crystals to build territories that conform to their own world's laws. That place is divided into many regions by the broken laws. Some regions are occupied by the sea race, while some are occupied by the human race. No one can guarantee their own safety. No matter if you have amazing killing power or excellent escape techniques, you can die in the next moment. Jiang Wang looked at Cheng Gongsheng and wanted to let him know the cruelty of the bewildering world, so as to highlight the greatness of Cheng Xuan's Buddha portrait. He said slowly, "But in that extremely cruel battlefield, I found a peaceful place. That region is no different from the modern world. There is no risk of mutation, and there are no sea race. Because the sea race is suppressed by the laws there, just like in the modern world. People call that place the Buddha portrait's pure land." That sounds very impressive. Cheng Gongsheng's eyes didn't show any fluctuations. Jiang Wang knew that his feelings must be complicated, but he still pretended not to know something that he didn't know. Thus, he continued, "Your father killed 2 true kings of the sea race. Then he collapsed his Tao body and created the Buddha portrait's pure land. Before he died, he left behind a sentence. Buddha portrait's death is not for the Chongxian surname, not for the Dachi country, but for the human race of the world. Buddha is merciful. May all living beings be saved. This place will be shared by the human race. It will never be alone." Sounds like something that kind of person would say, Cheng Gongsheng said. "I think," Jiang Wang said, "he is a great person. Yes, he is very great." Cheng Gongsheng raised his eyelids. "As a human expert, he is very great. As a good friend of the dethroned crown prince, he is very great." The fatty grinned. Even for the Chongxian surname, he used his death to protect the family. He didn't owe them anything. Jiang Wang noticed that the fat on his face was trembling slightly. It was an emotion that he was trying his best to suppress, but couldn't completely suppress. "Only for me." His voice finally couldn't be so calm. "He is selfish. If Chongxian Buddha portrait didn't die, with his strength of killing 2 true kings of the sea race in a row, there would definitely be no one else who would want the position of Lord of the Zhonggenjia. Then, as his son, Cheng Gongsheng wouldn't lack anything. He wouldn't need to work hard for anything. He could easily inherit the title of Marquis Baoang. No matter how much young Gunzuin stole the glory of his peers, he could only open another residence. That way, the relationship between the cousins might not be like it was now. Cheng Gongsheng wouldn't have such a childhood. Then, could Chongxian Buddha portrait not die? As a perfected person of the present age, a famous general who had personally taught Xiong Tu, how could he not have a choice? He could have first chosen to lead the army to conquer Xia, and then he could have chosen to ignore Jiang Wuliang. Even after the Qi emperor was enraged, as long as he showed his attitude and cut ties in time, he might have been able to escape unscathed. But in the end, he chose to die. Cheng Gongsheng was right. Chongxian Buddha portrait didn't betray others, friends, family, or the human race. He only betrayed him. Even the last words he left behind before his death didn't mention Cheng Gongsheng. When he went out to sea alone and met his death, did he ever think about what kind of life his young son would usher in? He was loyal and righteous. But what about his son? The carefree and happy time that should have been spent riding a hawk and walking a dog was shattered because of his departure. As the son of a perfected person, the direct descendant of the Zhonggenjia, he had learned to read people's faces at a very young age. Jiang Wang didn't say anything. The little fat boy who would lie on the ground after being tripped and wait for others to have enough fun had grown into the current Cheng Gongsheng in countless days and nights. Who had the right to forgive him? 14 was still silent. He silently put his hand on Cheng Gongsheng's shoulder. Cheng Gongsheng also seemed to gain strength from his hand. So he held the armrest, got up and said, "That's it. You're tired. Rest early." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.